almost done with this.
I know. Oh, Florida, all right. Good evening. I'm hereby calling to order the meeting of the Committee of the Whole of March 28th. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Balstraya.
Present.
Mr. DeJohn.
Here.
Mr. Mano.
Here.
Mr. Monaco. Mrs. Sabetta.
Here.
Mrs. Snyder.
Here.
Mrs. Teresi.
Here.
Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. The purpose of this meeting this evening is to discuss and be given an update of the Aquatic Center. So we can start with Mr. Trotta. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. We're pleased to be moving into finishing up our design development phase, which is the middle phase of 3 design phases. The last phase we'll be starting over the next couple of months is the construction document phase, but right now we're in design development. And we're in the process of, we've finished drawings, we're doing some QA on our drawings from the owner's rep side, from GPD, and from members of our sort of steering committee from the city, and of course our internal team. So we're really looking hard at our drawings, coordinating the engineering, the architecture, site civil, all of that is happening right now. And as well, we're working on Higley, the construction manager. Gavin is representing them today. They're working on a cost estimate, so that in a couple weeks, probably at the next council meeting, we'll be able to give an update of here's where we stand construction cost-wise. And then we have from the architectural team, we also have another cost estimator working on the art side so that we do the checks and balances of the construction manager's estimate, so we make sure that it's right on I guess all coordinated together and rectified all the different ups and downs of numbers. We've also issued, as we talked maybe the last time, we did a building demolition package, which is part of the agenda today at council. Steel, roofing, and site work. So all of those have been out to bid. Some numbers are coming back. But we are shortly going to know a lot of the construction costs of a good portion of the project. And it'll really start setting what the trend is for the industry right now with this kind of bid climate. So we're looking forward to seeing those numbers. And if you have any questions more specific, Higley can answer those. Obviously on the site, I don't know if you've driven by, but trees are down on the site. So that's kind of a big first step of recognizing the enabling projects that are necessary. So next in line is the building demolition of the community center. And we have done the diligence on elements of the site or in the building to make sure we retain the valued components of those buildings that need to be saved and repurposed in our new project. We still have, the project has not increased, it's still at 33,500 square feet approximately. The square footage of water, the pool deck, all of that remains the same since the last time I presented it to you. Keep going, one more. So this is the sort of the technical site plan. This is the construction document that has gone out for bid. We're actually working on an addendum because we're sort of at a very fast pace of getting out the documents, get it to bidders. Other information is evolving as we go. So sometimes during our bid process, like steel, we had to issue an addendum to just make sure that all the most latest information is out to those bidders to really avoid having change orders later on in the project, or at least to minimize those. So this diagram really shows everything that's involved in the project from the right side, which is the service center, moving left to the main parking lot, our building, and then the pool deck. We have, we're working on all the details of underground utilities, their locations. We just had conversation today to make sure that the utilities for the playground do not interfere with foundations for playground equipment. So we're coordinating that, and that's part of an addenda that's going to come out to make sure that we have routed those so we maximize the square footage that we can have for the playground. The service center itself on the right side here, highlighted, keep going. This is this kind of rotated. North is to the left, Marsola is to the left in this diagram. But we wanted to really show you to make sure it was important the last time we talked about what is the berming going to look like? What is the cross section? So as you see on the bottom of the page or section A and the top section B, that we have the parking terminates with mounding that goes up to a retaining wall, retaining blocks, concrete blocks. And we have arborvitae on the top of it, and we have a 6-foot solid fence at the top of that. So we're really getting some good elevation and really trying to hide the service center the best we can. We only have so much of land from the edge of the parking to the east to the service yard, so we're maximizing the slope and berming up and then putting sort of a green wall, if you will, along that edge to really hide the service center the best we can. But you could probably be, when everything's mature, you're hiding 12, 14 feet of mounding, if you will, for what's going to be stored there. So I think that'll be as good as it can be. And then off from Marsol, the same thing. We wanted to make sure we're hiding the service center from Marsol and the homes across the street, even though they're kind of it's their sides of their houses that face this. We still wanted to be good neighbors that direction as well. So we're creating mounding in a very similar fashion there. And in fact, the pine trees around the current service building have been taken down. They're laying down right now, and we're going to be planting new landscape and berming at that location. When we get to some questions, we have our civil engineer, Chris Bednar, is here, and Chris Meske for landscape, if you have any questions. Then at the front entrance, next one. This diagram was just shared today by Chris Bednar, our civil engineer, and we're looking at it's kind of hard to see kind of where we are, but the bottom of the page is the main entrance, the vestibule for the community center, and up top is the aquatics entrance. And what we're doing is it shows that we're having a zero curb line. So at the aquatic center, there's probably a good 30 feet of zero curb line, no step up, no small little handicap ramp. The whole curb ramps up. So and then we have bollards. There's 6 bollards that protect pedestrians there from any car hitting them if they're kind of gathering outside the aquatic entrance. That'll protect them. Same thing down at the main entrance. We have a couple columns to the main canopy that we're protecting, but we're also protecting the front entrance so no car can just drive into the facility. And so this is just the latest drawing. Just wanted to share with you what we're doing with that. Then the picnic pavilion. This is one of the latest renditions. You haven't seen it, but it's going to be a timber framed structure, and it's going to start bringing that wood element and that warmth to the site. And then we have a corrugated, deep ribbed, structurally intact curved roof system that'll go on top of that. And that is about 26 by 50 in size. I think we have between 8 to 10 picnic tables are underneath that area. And then the lawn right to the left is where camp can gather and put their belongings sort of off the pool deck area. That picnic pavilion is fenced in from the aquatic deck, and it's fenced in from the playground. But through opening certain gates, the playground could have access to it, or the public could have access, or lock it off, or the pool deck can have the access or lock it off, or it's totally blocked off that no one has access to it. So it's got a lot of flexibility on the use and kind of control of that area. This is one of the later renderings we just did of the main entrance, where we were showing the Architecture Board of Review on the building itself. If you look at the left at the wainscot, that darker area, we're going to bring the brick in and out about a 1/2-inch striping as we go. They wanted to see a little bit more texture to that lower level, and we did that. So this is one of the illustrations that we sent to them. The next slide shows sort of the gymnasium, a little closer up view. Probably a better representation of the finish colors, the brick, the corrugated panel, the silver color, and the wainscot, the lower level, darker brick. That door you see in the foreground, it would actually be painted so it would match the brick color, so it would blend in more. And then we'll have some landscape along the edge. This was starting to show some ballers, but they're not actually going to be in that location. They're kind of at the front entrance, as we just previously looked at. And then the front entry canopy has a real slender feel to it. It matches the fascias of the current building in height, and then we have the wood grained metal panels underneath and some strip light fixtures. Floor plan, I'm not going to go over too much in detail. It's just the basic floor plan that you've seen before, just working out all the nuances and details of, this is a complicated building in many respects to the structural steel, getting ductwork in and around places. We've got high ceilings, we've got gymnasiums, we've got the concourse, and it's getting kind of exciting. And I think one of the next meetings will start showing you some of the interior finishes. I think you would like to see the progress of that and how we're treating the main public spaces in each of the other individual areas with the carpet choices, paint colors, ceiling accents, lighting, things like that. The pool deck itself has not changed anything. It's just evolving from the detail of the construction details, the drawings. That's what everyone is kind of focused on right now on the project. The next slide shows the one of the attempts to be a good neighbor to the Sunnydale folks was to, make sure that the slide has more muted colors that don't stand out. This is just an illustration that we took from that presentation. And then we've readjusted the community slide heights in the neighboring communities, and Mayfield Heights at the bottom at 40 feet. This is the kind of an updated spreadsheet of how Mayfield Heights compares to other municipalities. The pool deck, we're working right now with vendors on the shade structures and getting pricing on that, and we can probably show some more images of that the next time, but we're working on how many of these shade structures, how far apart are they, the ones that are in the zero depth pool, those sort of 3 green triangle ones, they're very custom, and we're trying to pin down the right locations for those. But just sort of in progress still of figuring those out and understanding the budgets for those. There were some questions asked about the sunshade on the project this is in July. This is a 9 o'clock in the morning, sort of the shadows coming from the east this is the middle of July, 9 o'clock in the morning. Next slide, we'll just go over, this is 10 o'clock, 11, 12, and then the early afternoon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3. You start seeing the giant slide shadow going on the pool at around 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and then at 6 o'clock at night you see the shadows, how they stretch onto the pool deck. Just continuing to talk about the buffer zone on the west side of the site, we are doing the new 6-foot fencing, vinyl fencing. And we, of course, got rid of the walking path to kind of clean that up and to not have pedestrians that direction. We're planting Norway spruce, and we'll show a couple diagrams of that coming up here. And we've actually, one of the important things the last time, it's the last bullet point, but it's really an important one. We're providing new storm sewer with inlets all along that edge and some perforated under drains to make sure that we dry that area out. It's every time we've walked back there and through the winter, it's been, flooded or really wet and damp and muddy. So one of the things when we talked to the neighbors was to make sure that we can perhaps improve that area for them as well in their backyards and get some very intentional drainage back there. So not only will we have some mounding and the trees, the spruce trees, we will also have some subsurface drainage to really help out, drying that out. We've taken down the dead trees. We've flagged those. We walked the site. Those are now down. And then we're going to, add a lot of new trees. Here's the fencing that we talked about. You've seen this one probably before. And then this is the current landscape sketch of, it's starting to show areas where we're going to, mound up, put additional trees, and create some berming to really elevate the spruces, the Norway spruce, as high as we can, and block the views. And we've gone through that exercise of showing sort of the views with the trees. But one thing we're going to make sure that we do is make sure we walk the site when we have the extra earth that we're moving around. We're going to make sure that we get the mounding where it needs to be, we plant the trees where it needs to be, meaning we're going to actually walk it on the site, look from the backyards and make sure we position everything right where they need to be. It's one thing when you have a survey, you have the trees shown and you indicate the mounding, but it's another thing to make it the best blocking of the pool deck and the slide, of course, and we're gonna make sure we do the best we can with that. And this is sort of a cross-section that shows a Sunningdale resident in their backyard to the left, the 6-foot fencing, and then we're gonna mound up where you see the new Norway spruce. In the center, we got some existing trees that are much taller that are there now, and then the pool deck would be to the right. But really trying to create the best height we can from day one with trees. This was sort of an old landscape plan prior, but to the right just shows the type of the Norway pines that we're looking to use. And this was just the model from above, but I think that's kind of all I wanted to kind of go through real quickly, and then just leave it open for questions. And we do have Higley here from the construction manager. We have landscape and civil represented as well. So I'll open the floor.
Okay. Does any member of council have any comments or questions about what we've seen so far? Mr. DeJohn?
Could I see that one slide with all the pools?
Sure.
Other pools, please.
Keep going back a couple more, Christopher.
Uh,
There you go. Is that what you're talking about?
No, the one that had the other city pools
Oh.
slides.
One, there it was. Thank you. So we had Westlake and I think Beach. We had a couple of them that were higher than the actual, so we've corrected that on our diagram. And the Mayfield one would be the tallest of all of those.
Mr. DeJohn?
So this is a question for Mr. Ward. Mr. Ward, what are you going to do with the pool area that's existing?
So the current Draga pool area will be part of Phase 2, and that's where we will install the turf field. So the turf field will encompass Hobie Field, Funaro Field, and into at least half of Draga pool as it stands now.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Belstraya?
Chris, do you think we could get, this is the first time I'm really seeing, I think council's really seeing kind of the plan for the service area. Do you think we can get maybe a copy of that and look at that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And can we go back to that? I just wanted to see the shielding from 271. Really doesn't give you a perspective of what.
Yeah, this
Graphics
diagram
good.
is showing the landscaping, but right now, there's no additional fencing shown to block it, but there's been lots of conversation about doing something along that edge to kind of shield it, but this diagram does not show that right now.
Yeah, this is all part of this project, so, this is the first indication we've had of what kind of shielding it's gonna be. You got a $30 million project here, and you're gonna have a service yard next to it. So, you wanna shield that the best way you can and really enhance, the pool area, and, you don't wanna see any kind of, materials in the service yard, and we wanna shield that as best as we can.
What we could do, this one, the fence that I mentioned that you cannot, that we don't have shown yet is to shield from 271 view looking at it.
Okay.
This shows some really good shielding from it. Section A is really the edge right there that ramps up, it mounds up against the retaining wall. It'll have these arborvitae that will, you know how those grow nice tall and create a wall there.
Yeah.
But that's truly will block the views from the parking lot to the service center. That's the most important one that we feel. Now, the arborvitae, they're, day one, they're not, they're going to be a certain size and they will grow to, but they're already going to be up, I can't quite, it looks like it's going to be up 6 feet, the retaining wall, plus the 6-foot fence. So without the arborvitae, it's about a 12-foot wall barrier, or probably about the height of this room as a wall looking, if I'm in the parking lot, it mounds up and then the 6-foot fence. So that's a pretty significant, then the arborvitae's in front of it, and that'll grow up, how tall those grow. So at the point in time, it'll be even shielded,
Is that the same concept that you're going to do along 271 as well?
No, so
with the-
we're limited on 271 because of CEI and their restrictions in the easements. We can't do mounding, we can't do on their property. We have to be able to have their vehicles traverse. And that's why if you see those three, Christopher highlighted please, those three concrete bins that are there,
Yeah.
they stop right there. We had them going much further, but we had to pull it back, and that's why actually the service center has reduced over time. And
Is that the easement right there?
yeah, so, we're very limited. We can maybe replace the fence that's along the chain link. I don't know whose fence that is. We're still kind of investigating that. Maybe we can replace that with a 6-foot solid or 8-foot to get a variance for.
Probably ODOT's.
But it's still not going to, it'll hide some, but we're about a 4-foot difference. 271's about 4 feet higher than this area. So it's kind of almost level, but I'm not sure how much a fence would do there. But we can, for the next time, maybe do a 3-dimensional of this area. Would that be
Yeah,
helpful?
that would be nice.
We'll do
Okay.
that.
Thank you.
Mrs. Tressi.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Are we planning on opening the existing pool this summer?
Absolutely.
And so we're going to open the pool, and we are assuming that this project is going to be done by next May to open the new pool? Is that the,
The hope.
That's the goal, I think.
It's the
Hope.
goal. Yeah.
That's part of the project, or part of the process here, and what's so significant with the approval today for the demolition of the buildings is, and getting potentially your approval, is that it's all sort of like a Swiss watch. It all has to go in a certain order, and if something gets out of sequence or if something gets delayed, it's crucial in our schedule. Right now, Higley is planning on opening it up at the time frame you suggested, but we don't have a lot of room for any kind of slips. So it's really important how we present, keep on track, and get approvals as you grant them.
so if there's a supply chain issue along the way that could really keep this pool from, or this project from being complete by next summer?
There is a risk to that, especially with all the market conditions that are going out. Our team spent a lot of time looking at those aspects of it, and so here soon, what you'll see is some enabling packages, as Chris has mentioned. So recognizing that steel is an issue from a procurement standpoint, we're out for bid on the steel, getting numbers in so that we'll be able to present to council and move forward with the steel package, okay? And that's, so that'll keep the project moving. Also, from a roofing standpoint, we're out for bid and getting numbers on the roofing package so that we can procure those materials early enough so that we have them. And then also, another item would be the generator. So right now, we've identified those 3 critical items as early packages to kind of keep the project moving and head those things off at the pass. A lot of the other components that we're seeing in the building, from our experience, from our, market communication with all our subcontractors and suppliers, they're still long lead, but we know that and we can mitigate that, early on in the project with the way that we're bidding it out and when the design deliverables are coming too. So we're looking at that every day by day.
And so the city has no recourse if we don't. We're just, there's no, how we do roads, and there's always a performance fee or whatever if the project is not done on time. That's,
Well, here's what I can tell you. If it's not, it won't be because we didn't try, and it's circumstances outside of our hands from a material standpoint. Yeah, but we've identified all those items to the best of our abilities, and right now we believe that we've mitigated those circumstances. So, but you know, we can't predict, like many, what's going to happen. But we think we got a good handle on it.
Thanks.
I guess I have a question. When you bid out this whole project, does it include like the carpeting and all the interior, the flooring, and all the stuff on the inside of these buildings as well?
It does. So, as I mentioned, we've got those enabling packages right now, so the roofing and the steel, and obviously those don't. Pretty soon, Chris will be giving us documents that will be able to go out for bid for the balance. So, yeah, it'll be the bricks and the mortar and all the paint, all the finishes, some equipment, all the mechanical, electrical, and then there's some discussion about how the FF&E, like the furniture and things, will be procured. But that's already being discussed, worked into our schedule and all that good stuff too. So yeah, it would be all in.
And then, Chris, can you do me a favor and show us a picture of that? I know I'm saying the wrong thing, but that amphitheater type area. I was trying to talk to Mr. Balestre about it, and I was explaining to him that it's not like the vision that I think he thinks it is.
Christopher, just go back to the pool deck plan. That would be, well, maybe, you can kind of see it in the top of this rendering. It's not rendered correctly 100%, but we're looking at some steps that you go up, some tiers of sunbathing chair layout area, and then a top area, and then it'll have, and it's not designed yet, I'm working on that right now, it'll have some timber structure, some corrugated roof, just like this other picnic pavilion, to kind of tie into that, so it'll have a permanent sunshade to it component. And then there's a ramp that kind of goes up around it, so a wheelchair or an accessible access is provided to the top level, and then it ramps back down. So it's just a very subtle, and it'd be bermed up with some landscape around it, but just a nice little raised platform area to view the diving platform area. And then if there was a performance or a little concert, you could have a small gathering around it, if that was desirable. But it's more just a unique sitting, sunbathing area.
So that is elevated to face slightly the pool area.
Yeah, it's facing right at the pool area, at the
Thought it was the
deep
other
water
way.
pool.
I thought you did.
And it just has a, you know, it's raised up, the first tier is raised up like 17 inches or so, and it's gonna have a low wall, so it's actually a bench that you could sit on. And each of the tiers kind of steps up that way, so you could have chairs or you could just sit on it.
Okay.
Mrs. Tressi?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. What is the building behind that little,
That's the storage building. So we extracted out storage from the building to save construction costs so that we weren't putting storage in expensive $300, $400 a square foot building. We moved it out in sort of a prefabricated building. And once again, it's sort of a Quonset hut design, and I'll share this as we develop it, but it's going to have that corrugated ribbed roof. So we have the pavilion, the picnic pavilion, the amphitheater, and the storage building all have the same sort of materials to tie them together. That's our plan. And that building has access from the loading dock, and it's separated from the building, and we'll have storage of seasonal holiday decorations. It'll have pool storage, as well as the chairs will go in there in the wintertime for the pool deck.
Are the outdoor fire pits involved in this plan?
We're not showing those yet. You know, what we have is a placeholder for this outdoor living room, and we're going to create the space for it, and we're going to see how that develops. But I think that's something over time can be developed in, you know, more detail. But we are, you know, like we said, we just got our site civil package, all the utilities, and now we're working for the end of May, all these other accoutrements to the space, and we'll be able to present that. Because we have 2 months here ahead, we will be able to get with you all and show you progress from the interiors and so forth. So we'll be presenting that probably maybe at the next in 2 weeks. Would be nice to give you a little preview.
Mrs. Tressi?
thank you, Madam Chairman. Chris, the green canopy, that's going to take this slide up another 10 feet, 12 feet?
Yeah, I'm not
The-
exactly sure of the height, but you're correct. It'll be somewhere in that range during the season, the 3.5 months, and then it'll be taken down.
And is there a lifeguard unit or chair underneath that canopy? Is that what it?
The lifeguards would be standing there, several of them, to make sure, from a height standpoint, to make sure people go down the right slides that they're able to, per regulations, and be there for safety. But they're not sitting, they're, you know, kind of standing and helping, keeping control of the upper deck. And then at the bottom of the slide as well, there'll be lifeguards as well.
So we would probably need 3 or 4 lifeguards right in that area,
For the whole giant slide, there's, yes.
3 or 4.
Yeah.
Sean, how many lifeguards do we typically have at the pool?
When we're really busy, again, that's during the 1 to 4 hour, typically we'll have 13 lifeguards. And in this situation, I think we're close to 13 lifeguards as well. So it'll be the same type of situation. There will be a lifeguard at the top and there'll be a lifeguard at the bottom. But the slides are going to 3 different pools, so there'll be someone at the bottom of each different pool. But there'll be, for the run out, is what you're looking at right now, the giant slide, there'll be someone at the bottom of that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. DeJohn?
Thank you, Madam President. I really don't think that you're going to be able to get this done by next May. And the reason I say that, I know somebody that started a house last February, and they are so behind because they can't get materials. So why are you so confident that you can get this done by next May?
Well, the company that I work for obviously is a big company, one of the most respected companies in Cleveland. This is what we do for a living. This is what we do every day. And so we're confident that we're going to be very close to that date.
And that's why, as a team, from the design and doing the drawings to the construction manager, we prepared these early bid packages. If we had not done that, we would not make the schedule. The other fallback position that we've talked about, always need to have a plan B, is the pool, and the pool deck is sort of a different project in a way than the building itself. Even though they're run concurrently, in a way they have some different timeframes and stuff. If for some reason the building got delayed, we have spoken to Tom in the building department about, you could maybe get temporary occupancy of the building for the pump room and get the pool going, and maybe you're still finishing out materials, the inside of the community room for a while. So we're not saying that that's what's going to happen, but we have started to think about what ifs, and we need to make sure that we're all prepared over the next year to know what's plan A, which is what we're presenting, what's a plan B, and if there is a plan C. Because just to be prepared, know how we're going to handle it.
Mr. Ballestrea?
Chris, just one observation, because we had talked about, the amphitheater, I'm going back to that, and you talked about maybe there possibility of a small concert or a band playing or something like that. Has there been any thought to maybe covering a part of the pool, like the diving area, with something solid that you could have as a deck for folks to sit that would be safe?
Oh, you mean cover this water surface?
The water surface, to have more surface area? It's just wouldn't be conducive to having, I can't see anyone within this drawing sitting and safely watching something there where a band could set up or something like that.
The idea of this amphitheater derived actually partly from council here. There was an idea, and I forget which member mentioned it, but you wanted to make sure that we could walk around, have a nice walking path within the pool, right?
Right.
And so that's where that, as you're walking around, if you're enjoying the day and you want to, get your sneakers on and go walk around, you have a pathway, and that's part of the pathway is to go up the ramp behind it, come around and loop around. Because remember, we got rid of the walking paths, right?
Right.
So we did that, but then we thought in a lot of these facilities like Westlake and some other ones, they had these little side areas where they had just layout chairs under a canopy, and we wanted to do the same. But then I got the idea, I said, look, if we're going to be sitting on the end, and it kind of gives a nice terminus to the site, so it just, when you're looking across the pool deck, it has an ending with a statement, which would be that little amphitheater, but it's really for sunbathing is the primary goal. And if you want to get out of the way of all the kids and the commotion, you can go over in that area and lay out. It'll be partially covered. So that's the main purposes of it. If it ends up that you could do a little performance and put some chairs in the front and do something great, but that's not really the main intention of it.
No, it's just a thought for, maybe future use, because I know there's places that cover pools like that and use it as a hard cover.
I I think that's a great idea. I can't speak from my experience on how that would work and the cost of that, but you're right, that there is, you know, a 40-foot sort of foreground, but you can't have 400 people sit there or whatever. But
No,
it-
no, I'm not
But
saying
the
that,
other thought was that if you ever did something in the evening time, like show a movie and people could float in the pool, and that's how you view it, that's kind of another way that some communities have done it. You actually are in the pool to watch something, so that's kind of unique too.
Yeah, they do that in Florida where we stay all the time.
That work, does
Yeah,
it?
oh, yeah. It's an inflatable screen. They just inflate the screen and,
So right now, we don't have
Yeah.
plans for that, but that's how this could be used. But I really consider that as a out-of-the-way sunbathing pavilion, and then you could have, it's kind of a continuous walking path, and really kind of block the south side of the site in the freeway with, you know, there'll be a canopy up there designed as well.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Mano or Mrs. Sabetta, do you have any questions?
No.
Mr. DeJohn?
Just thinking.
No, no. Well, I guess this resolution that's before us, oh, first thing, did we get an email of your PowerPoint here?
I'm not sure if it, probably not.
No?
No.
Can I get an email of that?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yes.
Can we all get one?
I will send it to Karen, and if you don't mind distributing it, yeah. And we will work on the three-dimensional of the service center as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just one more question that I have. I know that the height of the slide has been an issue with a lot of people sitting up here. Is there any compromise with that?
Well, well, I think the compromise is all the mitigation measures we've done is adding the trees, the blocking it, changing the colors of it, so forth. We're at the point right now with the height of that. If you reduce the height of it, it changes all of the flumes, what they're called, the slides that come out of it, and we would have to start redesigning the pools to make it work. We're kind of almost at the point, you know, of you know, no return with that, to be transparent with you. Lowering it is really not much of an option as we move forward, where we stand right now.
Mr. DeJohn, did you have something?
Yeah, I'm just really worried about the shade aspect of this. Because those fields are very, very shady over there. And now we're gonna add trees to try to block the slide. Those trees will be on the western portion of the property, right?
Yeah, right now there are 60-foot trees that are there. We're gonna put in 12-foot trees on some mounding 3 feet. So we might, day one, they could be between 12 to 15 feet of trees. It's gonna take them a long time to grow, but you've already got trees that are much taller, and that's the sunshade study that we showed you, that it's not gonna be on the deck. Well, the slide tower at a certain point does, you know, it's mostly over the pool. At 4 PM, it starts to shade the pool. But that's kind of at the point when you're ready to, the peak time is, you know, noon to 4 is really when you get the most individuals there.
Is this pool gonna be heated?
No,
No?
I don't believe it is, no. Good question. Is it? Oh, okay, well,
It is
It
heated.
is going to be heated?
Sean says yes.
Oh,
Yes, no?
yes. He said yes.
Yes, the pool will be heated. Both pools will be heated.
Both pools. Is our current pool heated?
That's hard.
What?
Did you say the current pool?
Yes.
I mean, you mean the pool we have now?
Yes, that's the current
I
one.
thought you meant,
no.
we have a vortex that has
The
a current.
current thing in there.
That's-
Oh, sorry. Oh, no. Yeah, no, the existing pool is heated.
Both of them, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. DeJohn?
Thank you. Chris, what's the square footage of the gym?
That's around 9,800 square feet, 9,800 square feet.
So enough for 2 basketball courts?
Yes, we have one large basketball court if there's a divider curtain in the middle, And when it's open, you have one long basketball court. That's the main court. Then you put the divider up, and you have 2 practice basketball courts. And then you also have 2 volleyball courts also on the 2 halves. And then we have 6 pickleball courts.
And I guess my last question is what happens if costs really skyrocket, which I think they're going to? I don't think we're getting out of this less than $30 million. But what if we say, that's it, we're done at 26? As Mrs. Fagan says, that's what we have budgeted for this project. What happens?
I guess I would lean on
What's that?
I lean on Karen to say, are we, if,
Mrs.
what,
Fagan.
what,
You
what,
answer that.
Mrs. Fagan, what bridges that gap, I guess?
What bridges they get?
We will know more when we have those final numbers next meeting. And then I keep crunching numbers, I keep changing the projection, but I really want to know that number's pretty solid before right now I'm very comfortable.
See, well, that's what concerns me, because we're taking down the community building. We've already started taking down trees. We've sold everything inside of the community building, all which makes me very angry, because we don't even know these total costs yet. So I guess that's not your problem, but I just want this council to know that I'm upset about that. We did promise the residents a pool, but we never promised the residents a $30 million pool. So,
Madam Chair, if I could.
Mayor?
So it was hard to predict the pandemic and the cost of product going out and procurement problems, but it's our intention, as we get these initial bids in, to come up with a figure that we could let council know, hey, look, this is a figure that we're more or less a not-to-exceed figure. So, and we talked to Mr. Mano about that. He actually brought it up at the last meeting. So we're trying to come up with that figure so council has some sort of, comfort level in getting the number or close to that, a number, a solid number, and then having Mrs. Fagan's input on that so she can give it to council how she feels about it.
Mayor, did you say a not-to-exceed number? Is that what you,
We're hoping we can get to a not to exceed. The problem is,
I just didn't know if that's what you said.
yeah, that's what
Okay.
yeah. Well, the problem is with procurement and prices, it's extremely difficult to say, okay, this is a rock-solid number, as you all know. And that's why we're kind of going through this the way we are proceeding.
Right.
But we want to come up with a number so we can give it to council, so, you can have some kind of comfort level in that. This is the figure we're shooting for, and we're, with Higley's help, pretty confident that we'll stick to that. And then Mrs. Fagan's input as whether or not we can afford it or not.
Does Mrs. Fagan, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
Madam Chairman,
No, it's
sorry.
okay, go ahead.
Does Mrs. Fagan have a drop-dead number, like, the Higleys can't go over?
I'm not gonna
X
say that
amount.
in front of the construction guy. Yeah, look at Gavin, he's covering
I
his
didn't ask
ears.
you to say the number, I just asked if you had a number
I mean,
in your
God
mind that we don't want, he blocked his ears. We don't want to go over a certain number. You have that number, and you're working backward off that number? It's, 10 million,
Everything
and
is,
after this.
everything is a balancing act. If it came in way over where we think it may come in, then we go back and say, what are we gonna do? Do we cut things from this project? Do we look elsewhere? And we look at what else we can do? And then it would be up to me to present those options and see where the administration council wants to go with that.
But will that be too late? I mean, again, if you say that, okay, we have $10 million, $20 million, whatever the number is, and you start to see their figures come in, you would know in that critical path where it tends,
Right.
where it's tending to go. You'd have to start cutting back then, not waiting until you get close to your private number.
Absolutely. And that's part of the reason when we get the two packages back for the next meeting, we get that steel package back, that's going to be a really good indication of where the market's at, where things are starting to come in. And if we know what they're, and I don't know the number off the top of my head, what they're projecting for that, but if we know what they were projecting for that, and then we see where the bids come in, that's going to give us an idea of where the project may go, and then we'll be a little more comfortable extrapolating that out for the entire project.
So that will be this week, this Wednesday, or next Wednesday?
It would be for the meeting on the next council meeting, which is the 11th, I believe, that we're looking to bring those packages back. The due date for when they're due in? Do you remember? Yeah, when the bids are coming in, when you'd have an, okay. So
That's
yeah,
next
the
week.
bids will come in on the 6th. They'll have time to review those, go over them, make their recommendation to council, so we can get that information to council. And that would be change order 2 and change order 3, one for the steel package, one for the roofing package.
Okay, and then the resolution that's on our desk this evening, there's a change order.
Correct.
So can you explain this to us?
You want,
We have a change order, we haven't even started yet.
Bad terminology. Okay.
That is bad terminology.
So, the way the contract's set up and the way the city is elected to go from a contract letting standpoint is a construction manager risk process, okay? And so that's a phased process. So, you've already approved our pre-construction contract, and we've been operating under that pre-construction contract. So, the change order that's being referenced is really called a contract amendment, right? And, part of the contract contemplates that as we go and doing these amendments along the way. So that's really this demolition is that first amendment or kicks off the construction portion of the contract. And then you'll see other GMP amendments, as they call them, for the steel, the roofing, the site work and pool, and then the balance of the building, as I mentioned earlier. So you'll see a number of those along the way. And the goal is to get you the steel, the roofing, and possibly the site work associated with that. So there'll be a big portion of the project there. And as mentioned, that'll give us a really good indication of where we're at on the project.
So this 190,000 has not been changed. It was what was originally proposed for
Yeah,
this
so-
portion.
Right, so an important aspect of that is obviously we're participating on the project, and per the contract, there's costs that we have to facilitate. So it's us being out there, right, so staff, and then you've got bonds and insurance and all that. So that's part of that. And actually, if you look at what was submitted previously, even when we were pursuing the project, we submitted costs and not to exceed numbers. So our staffing, our general conditions and all that won't go up, okay, despite any economic conditions or whatever. Now, what you see will go up, and it's percentage-based, and, part of what we call your cost of work of your insurances and your bonds, those are all driven off percentages, and, we can't control those. It's just a bid circumstance, too. So a lot of those costs that you see in that 190, I believe it is, for that first GMP or change order, as we called it earlier, majority of those costs were already locked in early when we first participated on the project. You're just starting to see those now. And they're a little bit disproportionate because the demos represents a smaller portion of the work, but it's 2 months almost of actual construction at the beginning of the job. And there's some overlap with the site work too that you'll see. But it's just hard for us to make that break, so. If that answers the question.
Madam President.
Thank you. Mr. DeJohn.
So this change order is for the demolition of the community building, is that correct?
It's the community building, part of that maintenance area, and then certain aspects of the site. So the dugout facilities, the
Guard tower.
scores, building, and a few other concession. Thank you.
And again, help me understand, why is it a change order?
It's not a change order, it's a contract amendment. It's just adding to our contract those different aspects or phases of the project. Because right now, we have a pre-construction contract. So we're getting into that construction contract.
Our wording and our I'm sorry if I
Oh,
can.
go ahead, no.
Our wording and our terminology hasn't necessarily, and citywide, municipal-wide in general, hasn't necessarily kept up with this new CMR model. So the first contract with them was, I think, like $38,000.
And that was just for
Right.
pre-construction.
And so every addition will be a
Change order.
will be a contract amendment, but in our terminology here in the city, we have called them change orders. Yes,
And this was part of the original
correct.
quote, right? Okay.
Well, not part of the original quote, was part of the original plan, is where I thought you were going with it. We knew we had to take that down.
Right, right.
Yes.
We had to take down the building.
It's budgeted dollars. that
That's
were
what I
part
was
of the
wondering, if it was
project.
budgeted in the whole,
But we're just getting into those in phases instead of just one big lump sum. And that gets back to our discussion about keeping things moving and getting into that date, as you asked, we're gonna make that date. These are those enabling aspects that allow us to do that.
So, Madam President.
Mr. DeJohn.
So, if we waited until we had a full council here, if we waited a couple more weeks, is that gonna set you back?
It actually will. So our current contract, so any delay is actually a day for day and possibly more, because what that does is push us into winter. What it'll do, it'll delay the site work that we have to do, okay? It'll definitely delay, if you're putting the steel and the roofing in that discussion, in your question, then that'll also delay things significantly. So
Yeah,
this,
well, we're not putting that in there. We're just saying,
Yeah,
hey,
so-
hold off on tearing this down till we have some final costs.
yeah, so it will delay the project. The demolition will delay the project. We've got EPA notices in there. It's gonna take us a certain amount of time that we actually have to do the work and get things cleared and out of the way for the site work contractors to do their thing, so.
Well, I just don't feel comfortable, voting on something that we don't have final costs with. But I'm only one person, but thank you.
Mr. Trotta.
I think two other important points are that we have, and Gavin, you can correct me, we have about $2 million of construction contingency on the project. So in the numbers that we're looking at, we have some dollars for the what-ifs. So there is that sort of buffer into the project. The other thing is that Higley has brought on a pool contractor, and they actually bid that work, and that's probably, I'll just call it a $7 million part to the project. So between the pool of $7 million and all of these fast-track early packages could be in the $11 to $12 million range of the project. Will be known very soon where we stand on that. So you're going to have almost, 2/5 of the project defined within the next couple weeks and really know where we stand. It's not just these first early ones. There's a lot more that we do know. And we'll share that with you as we go.
Mr. Trotta, can you bring sample boards of what the exterior will look like the next time? So we
yes.
can get an idea, because there's been different colors and different variations, just to give the council a better idea of what we are going to be using structurally on the outside,
Yes.
since that's more, you've already committed to kind of that already, I think.
Well, we've been through a preliminary architecture board of review meeting. We have not gone to the final for the review board, for planning commission, or with council. So those are the next steps.
And then as far as the trees, have you contacted Euclid Creek and Chagrin River watershed?
Chris, do you have some update there?
Correct, yes. We submitted permit drawings last week. We submitted to Chagrin Watershed folks and also NERSD, Cuyahoga Soil and Water, the city engineer. But it was outside of the Euclid Creek watershed, so the city engineer indicated that they would not be reviewing it. But it's in the Chagrin River watershed, and we received actually comments back from the folks from Chagrin today.
Okay. I know Euclid Creek sometimes will have trees that they would donate to projects, and they like to know when the beginning of a project is going to start to see if they can help out in any way.
Okay, yeah, we could reach out to them and set them a courtesy set of plans.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Are there any, Mr. DeJohn?
When did you come up with these costs here?
We received bids last week. So that was based on the trades costs or based on actual bids that we received. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the other costs associated with us were submitted, I can't even remember how long ago, 8, 9, 10 months ago, when we first were chosen for the project.
All right, thank you.
How many bids were there?
We received 3 bids for the demolition, and they were all around 15% window, so it's pretty good.
Thank you. Does any member of council have any more questions or comments? All right, thank you all so much for coming this evening and filling us in on this exciting project. Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, second by Mrs. Tressi. We are now adjourned. Roll call. Roll call.
All in favor?
Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone this evening to the March 28th council meeting of the City of Mayfield Heights. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Belstria.
Present.
Mr. DeJohn.
Here.
Mr. Mano.
Here.
Mr. Monaco. Mrs. Sabetta.
Here.
Mrs. Snyder.
Here.
Mrs. Teresi.
Here.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will now move to acceptance of the minutes of the last meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the Committee of the Whole meeting of March 14th, 2022? Moved by Mrs. Teresi,
Second.
second by Mrs. Sabetta. Are there any suggested changes or deletions to those minutes? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? These minutes have been approved as written. Next is the approval of the minutes from the council meeting of March 14th, 2022. I hope everyone's had time to read these minutes over. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Balestreo. Second by Mr. Mano. Are there any suggested changes, deletions, or amendments to these minutes? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? These minutes have now been approved. Does any member of council have any correspondence or announcements this evening? Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you, Madam President. The annual Mayfield Cemetery meeting will be April 4th in Mayfield Village at 1 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabetta. We'll go to reports of officers, beginning with the mayor.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, everyone. Just a couple things this evening. As I reported last time, we are in the process of hiring a building director to take Tom's place. We're just waiting for the formalities to be taken care of, but by next meeting, I should be able to, hopefully by next meeting, introduce our new building director. Because Tom is set to retire at the end of the month. We do wish him the best. He was not able to come this evening. He had some medical issues to deal with, so he is out of commission tonight. But hopefully next meeting he will be here with our new building director, so we can introduce him. We also are in the process of hiring a fire safety inspector, so that's going through the process right now too, going through the paperwork, and hopefully we'll have an announcement on that soon. We did sell some items last week from the community center, kitchen equipment, office furniture, and the like, in our auction that we had last week. So some of those things were sold, and there's a lot left. So if anybody wants to take a look at anything over there, just a heads up to the residents, during the demolition and the building of the new aquatic and community center, the service department will not be taking hazardous waste during that period. So you have to contact Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District to take care of any of those, of that waste that you have if you want to get rid of it. And communications is important to all of us, especially during the planning and development and design status of the community center and aquatic center. So I'd like to stress the importance of reading and responding to emails daily in a timely manner as we move forward. So if anybody on council has any questions on emails or information they get, please reach out to us right away. And Bibby Bop is opening, BB Bop, whatever.
Bibby.
Bibby.
Bibby Bop.
I said it right the first time.
Yeah, Bibby Bop.
Is set to open April 7th. So there's a lot of buzz about that going on, so that's kind of exciting. And that concludes my report.
Are there any questions for the mayor? I just have one question. The median on Mayfield Road, is there any updates on what we're, might be doing over
I'm
there?
meeting with Tony and Chuck on Wednesday.
Perfect. Okay, great, thank you. All right, Law
Madam Pre-
Director, Mr.
Madam
Murphy.
President.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. DeJong.
Mayor, some residents had reached out to me about helping with the rehab of that medium section, and I gave them to Mr. Fatika, so you may want to ask them and give them.
I've heard
an-
about that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's aware, yeah, and we talked about it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Law Director, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no report this evening, but I'd like to request an executive session after the regular business to discuss litigation, economic development, and property acquisition.
Okay,
And that's all.
thank you. All right, Director of Finance, Ms. Fagan.
Thank you. Just a reminder to our residents that tax season is coming to an end soon. We are represented by the Regional Income Tax Agency, so if anybody has any questions, they can reach out to Rita, either their 800 number, which is 800-860-7482, or to their website. And the tax filing date this year is Monday, April 18th, so you do have that extra weekend to get everything accomplished. That's all.
Thank you, Mrs. Fagan. Any questions? Next, we will move to reports of committees, commissions, and boards, starting with the Building Committee. Mr. Monaco is absent this evening, so Mr. Mano,
I have no report.
thank you. Finance and Audit Committee, Mr. DeJong.
Thank you, Madam President. I have no report.
Legislative Committee, Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you, no report.
Okay. Public Works and Service, Mr. Balestria.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a report. Public Works Committee met on March 22nd, which is last Tuesday. As a result of that meeting, we have two motions on the agenda tonight, one for the 2022 road program and one for the 2022 sidewalk program. The committee, consisting of myself and Mrs. Tressi, recommends to council to accept the recommendations by the city engineer for the following streets: resurfacing of Edgewood, resurfacing of Iroquois, resurfacing of Sunset, spot repairs of Mayfield Road, concrete repair and asphalt overlay for Elmwood, concrete repair and asphalt overlay for Woodhawk. The total cost of construction approximately $2.2 million. The committee also added a supplement to the 2022 road program for the following streets for resurfacing only, and those included Longridge, Marshfield, Fairhaven, Eastondale, and Ashdale. The cost of that construction, approximately $1.18 million. The Marshfield area was originally slated for the 2023 road program. We had funds available, so the committee decided to add that to 2022. The 2023 and 2024 road improvements were discussed briefly, with the following streets being considered for 2023: Alcester, Algiers, Crestwood, Sunningdale, Westerham, Mallard, and Mayfair. And for 2024, Cordova, Jackie, Marsal, Mayfield Ridge, Ranchland, and Roseland. Now, all of those are subject to change since the Marshfield area was now moved into the 2022 program. So we ask that council pass that motion this evening. Also, the committee also recommends the passage of the 2022 sidewalk program for the following streets: the ABC streets, which is the Ashcroft area, East and West Minor, and Jackie Lane. Golden Gate, Maplewood, Ridgeberry, Orchard Heights, and Bonnie Lane will also be performed if the budget permits. I or Mr. Gerson can answer any questions at the time of the motions, and I believe Mr. Gerson would like to initially address council regarding the 222 road program at that time. Also, a grant was also received from the county to perform spot repairs on Ridgeberry. The grant will pay $40,000, and the cost to the city will be $35,000 for labor. We would like to add this as an amendment to the 2022 road program that's already on the motion. And also one final discussion, since council was not, council does not have the minutes as of yet. One final discussion was the county road projects grant. That is again available. That's a 50-50 grant, and we had used it in the past for the Gates Mills, as you recall, for last year. The committee discussed and recommended to the city engineer to investigate a left turn lane at Ridgeberry and Geesey as possibly one of the improvements to the city county area. So we'll investigate that and get back to council as maybe that one, maybe a project that we can do for next year. And that concludes my report.
Thank you.
Madam President.
Mr.
Mr. Balestria, did I hear you say that, couple things. First of all, did you say that all of the bases will not be replaced on our road program? The concrete bases? I heard,
There'll be two repairs for 2022, one for Elmwood and one for Woodhawk.
so it's
The
not
the other streets were resurfacing.
yeah, so it's not standard when you resurface a street to repair the base? And can
If
you,
it doesn't need it,
well, how do you know if?
that's a city engineer
All
question.
right, we'll discuss that
can
when it comes
discuss that
up.
when it comes
And then
up.
the other question is, I thought we were repairing sidewalks when we were resurfacing streets, and we did the ABC streets last year, so why didn't we do the sidewalks
They
then?
weren't done at that time because they weren't part of the original program for 2020.
So sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't?
Dan?
We'll discuss that when it comes up. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything further, Mr. Balestra? Thank you. Any further questions for Mr. Balestra at this time? Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes, Mr. Balestria, since there are no minutes, I did ask you to bring up the 271 overpass on Lander and Ridgeberry. Did you get to that?
We did not. Sorry, we did not discuss it.
Thank you.
We did, as far as the sidewalk area, that what you brought it to me, yeah, we did bring that up to Mr. Gerson.
The sidewalk, the whole area completely.
That
who's
area,
responsible?
yeah, he was going to look at it, but there was no resolution.
Thank you.
Is that something that you need a committee meeting for, to discuss
I think it would be part of,
of this?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we did present that to Mr. Gerson to take a look at. He said he would.
Perfect, thank you. Did you have your hand up? Yeah. Mr. DeJohn?
So, Mr. Balestria, the streets we are doing, is it gonna include the sidewalks, those that haven't been done, or don't we know if it's in the bids?
Now,
It's not?
the 20,
Shaking his head.
It is going
It
to,
is.
yes. Some of,
Well,
let me see.
when we get to this that
Okay,
portion,
all
he
right.
can answer all
Yeah.
your questions for you. Thank you.
Some of them. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Balestria. Parks and Recreation, Mr. Mano.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The Spring Summer Activity Guide has been mailed to the residents. Resident registration for day camp, pool passes and lessons, and school district residents for teen camp opened today. You may come in person to City Hall Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. with proof of residency needed to receive the resident rate. Non-residents registration begins on April 18th. The Bunny event for April 9th has been sold out. That'll take place at Oakville Park. To keep up to date on special events, please follow our Facebook page, City of Mayfield Heights Parks and Recreation. That's all I have. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you so much. Are there any questions for Mr. Mano? Safety and Transportation, Mrs. Tressi.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just spoke with Chief Elliott, and we have discussed scheduling a safety meeting next week. I'll talk to Shanisha on a day that will work, and we'll have probably an 8 a.m. meeting when Mr. Monaco returns from vacation.
Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, Board of Zoning Appeals, Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you, Madam President. The Board of Zoning did not meet, so I have no report.
And Planning, thank you. Planning Commission, Mr. Balestrea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No report. Planning Commission did not meet.
Okay, thank you. We will now proceed to the public portion of this meeting. Pursuant to City Code, each person will be allotted 5 minutes to speak, with a maximum of 30 minutes allotted for the entire public portion. If you are here in connection with an agenda item, this is your opportunity to address council. However, please know that this is not opportunity for debate or slighted comments. If you would like to be heard this evening and have not done so already, please fill out a form in the back located on the table. During the public portion, I will call each person wishing to speak to the podium. Please state your name and address for the record and speak clearly into the microphone. It is now 7:20. I will open up the public portion. You could just bring it up to me, please. Sorry. Is there anybody else that has a form that would like to speak this evening? Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Natalie, you could just come to, you could just, you're the only one.
All right, hello, my name is Wayne Natale.
Talk into the microphone, please.
My name is Wayne Natale, and I reside at 6440 Woodhawk Drive. Thank you for allowing me a few minutes this evening. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because I have shared, I think, with all of you my thoughts and comments relative to the road program, as well as our direction that we're heading with our pool and community center. So I would hope that at a minimum, before you consider your vote this evening, when that item does make it to the agenda, which I was very disappointed that it wasn't on the agenda, so that more people from the area could have seen that and been here to speak on it. But be that as it may. Regarding the pool, I'm told, I was not living here at the time when issue 9 was blooming, but I was told that an ordinance was then passed by council that approved using those funds for road improvements, for sidewalks, and for recreation. Nothing that I could see or read regarding issue 9 suggested any free rein of spending or that we would use those additional funds should they escalate to cover cost overruns. From what I understand, again, we are running millions of dollars, and I heard the figure of 10 million over budget, for the community center and pool projects. And it just disturbs me that sometimes, the mantra that has been espoused is promises made, promises kept. Well, sometimes promises can't be kept. There are circumstances, and we are living in those circumstances today with everything that's going on economically that we may not be able to afford, the spending. We need to live within our means. We do that as families. We try to do that as a country. And I would suggest to all of you, as you consider where we're going with this project, to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Natalie. Natalie, I'm sorry. Is there anybody else that would like to be heard this evening? Okay, 7:25, now we'll close the public portion. Move to resolution number 2022-25, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution 2022-25, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Hall Public Safety Upfitters for the purchase of equipment to outfit new police vehicles with lights, radios, and other necessary equipment for use by the Mayfield Heights Police Department and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, second by Mr. Balestrea. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mr. Balestrea.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes?
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Mano, second by Mrs. Sabetta. You should have received the invoice from Hall Public Safety Upfitters. It was recommended by Chief Mealy to go with this contract at a total cost of $36,825.75. This will outfit the new police cars that we recently approved for purchase. Does any member of council have any questions or comments? Mr. Balistreo?
Just one, maybe the mayor can answer it. This company seems like it's, I'm not familiar with. Is this a company that's new to the city, or have we used them before?
I believe we've used them before, yeah.
We have used them before? Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions? Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mr. Balistreo.
Yes?
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes?
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. This motion has been adopted. Resolution number 2022-26, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution 2022-26, a resolution authorizing the execution of a memorandum of understanding with the Cuyahoga County Board of Health regarding the provision of Phase 2 stormwater service in 2022 through 2025 and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mr. Mano, second by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes?
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mr. Balistreo.
Yes?
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Move.
Moved by Mrs. Tressi, second by Mr. Balistreo. We all should have received the memorandum from the Cuyahoga Board of Health, which proposed to provide stormwater services to the city of Mayfield Heights. It is outlined in the memorandum of the specific areas and programs. It will commence from the passage of this resolution through the year 2025, and I believe it will be no cost to the city. Is that true, Mrs. Fagan? That is true. That is correct. Are there any further questions or comments? Okay, roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. Balistreo.
Yes?
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes?
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. This resolution has been approved. Moving to Resolution 2022-27, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution 2022-27, an ordinance authorizing, it's a resolution authorizing an increase in the city's local share to resurface Som Center Road, ratifying verbal approval by council of said increase, and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Thank you. Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta,
Second.
second by Mr. Balistreo. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mr. Balistreo.
Yes?
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes?
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Mano, second by Mr. DeJohn. This resolution pertains to the increase in the local share portion of the resurfacing Som Center. After receiving the bids, it came in at $9,900 higher for our local share. All members of council received an email from Mr. Gerson as well as Mrs. Fagan about the emergency increase and the acceptance to the job bid. This is just the legislation for it. Does any council have any questions?
No.
This was last week, recall. Okay, roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes?
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mr. Balistreo.
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Resolution number 2022-27 has been approved. Resolution 2022-28, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution 2022-28, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with B&C Communications for the purchase and installation of dispatch console equipment to connect to the new Avtec dispatch console in the Mayfield Heights Police Department and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mr. Mano, second by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mr. Balistreo.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes?
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Move.
Moved by Mr. DeJohn, second by Mr. Balestria. This resolution is the acceptance of the bid for dispatch equipment for B&C Communications. This bid came in at $64,560.27. The chief has asked that we consider this contract for the new equipment and software. Last meeting, we passed legislation 2022-24 for B&C Communications.
Correct, we did. This is for a companion piece to go along with this for all of the equipment for the communication center.
Okay, perfect. Are there any questions for anyone up? All right, roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mr. Balestria?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes?
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes. This resolution has now been adopted. We will now move to Ordinance 2022-03. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
29.
Ordinance number 2022-03.
We have to add one to the agenda.
You have a resolution to add.
Okay. I don't have it in front of me. Okay. This time I need to, or in front of you, you should have a resolution that was added this evening in front of our seats on ordinance 2022-29. Mr. Murphy to read.
The proper procedure would be to add it to the
Oh,
agenda.
add to the agenda, I'm sorry. Do I have a motion to add this to the agenda?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Mano,
Second.
second by Mr. Balestria. Roll call on adding to the agenda.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Balestria?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes. 2022-29 has been added. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution number 2022-29, a resolution authorizing and approving GMP change order number 1 to the agreement with the Albert M. Higley Company for the construction of the Mayfield Heights Aquatic Center and the Community Center and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Mano,
Second?
second by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Balestria?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes?
Mr. DeJohn?
No.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Balestria,
Second?
second by Mrs. Sabetta. Discussion. Mayor, I'm going to turn this over to you. This is something we spoke about in the committee of the whole meeting. This is added on as part of the beginning project of the Aquatic Center, but I'm going to turn it over to you to explain it better.
So this is an addition, or actually, I hate to use that word, change order. It's a, it's a modification to the original contract with Higley. We had a pre-construction contract, now we're moving into construction, and this is what this is involving, this scope of work. So we never had a figure that you approved or a contract you approved for this, so it's not really a change order, but is a modification to, or an addendum, I'm sorry, that's the correct word, to the contract that we currently have with Higley.
Thank you. Is there any questions from council? Mrs. Tracy?
I'm so sorry, I did not ask a question earlier
okay.
that doesn't actually pertain to this, but I have two questions for either gentleman. The light poles that are currently at the community center in the park area, are all of those light poles coming down?
The majority of the light.
Please
pole-
identify your name
Oh,
and
Gavin
address.
Smith, sorry, Gavin Smith, 21040 Seabury Avenue, it's Fairview Park,
you.
Ohio, with the Albert M. Higley Company. So the majority of the light poles that are on the site as they exist now around the ball fields and the maintenance, those will come down and new ones will go up. So, and that doesn't include the street lights along the
It
street.
does or it does not?
Does not.
Does not.
Yeah, those will stay.
Thank you.
And,
Second, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
And then, and I don't know, maybe this is for Mr. Ward, but, so the pool, our existing pool, that's 50 years old, is going to be part of that's going to be the area of Phase 2. But if that pool is closed and empty because we're using this pool next May, what are we going to do with that pool? Are we going to fill it so it's not a hazard to the residents?
We haven't talked about what we're going to do. It is, in the months, the winter months, it's filled with water, and so there's a fence around it. So we probably could leave that as it is. I think a lot of it's going to depend on what happens with the time frame of the pool, and hopefully we're there and it's not a non-issue. So.
Can I interject?
Mayor?
We would have to see about funding and everything, but I don't really want to leave it there filled with the water,
Or
the way
empty.
it looks. It's pretty ugly. So, if finances dictate that we could, begin to do a little work over there, I would love to do that, but we'll have to see how it comes out.
Yeah,
But
I
at
ju-
least it's fenced and lockable right now, so.
Right, yeah, I just would worry about it being full of water and/or empty, right? And I know we talked about Phase 2 being pushed, so I just don't want to see that pool, the way it exists today, pushed into that Phase 2, 2 or 3 years down the road. Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry.
Madam President.
Mr. DeJohn?
So I just want to reiterate what I said at the Committee of the Whole. I really would have liked to seen Mr. Monaco here and a full council voting on this. Also, once we take this building down, there's no going back. We don't know what our construction costs are. They're up to 26 million. As I said earlier, I think it's going to be more like 30 million. We could put this city in financial straits. So I would really consider on voting on this right now. I know everyone wants to get going with this project, but I keep asking, what is the big hurry? I don't see anything that's a big hurry. Granted, we have a pool. The pool is going to be used this year. If we don't get done with this project next year, it can be used again. So there's really no hurry. And I don't think this project's going to be done next year because it's going to be very, very difficult getting supplies because there's supply issues out there. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could.
Mayor?
Yeah, if I can answer a couple questions there. As we looked and we've talked to Gavin and Higley, there's really, pushing this out could cost a lot more. So there's no definitive date that you could say, okay, costs are going to stop going up at this date. By pushing it out farther, we are risking spending 10 to 25% more, I believe, are some of the figures that we saw that some of the experts are predicting, going into the future. So waiting is going to cost us more money. And as far as putting the city in financial straits, again, I look to our finance director who has the expertise and the knowledge, and I've asked her, how do you feel about this? And I'll let you answer that question.
Thank you. I am comfortable going forward with this. As I said in the past, if we need to look at Phase 2 and break Phase 2 into portions, so it's a 2A, fill in the old pool, 2B maybe the fields or whatever, we may need to look at Phase 2 to be broken out, and parts of that may be delayed a little bit. As you all know from getting the reports I send you every month, income tax is coming in stronger than we anticipated this year. We are slightly over last year, which is a good thing, so I'm hoping that that continues. and we will continue to watch that.
Thank you.
Madam President?
Mr. Smith, one second.
Go ahead.
Can you do me a favor? Can you come back up? I know that in the committee of the whole meeting, you explained the reasoning, and I would like for you to explain it in case people weren't here.
So
for
the
what-
reasoning for this particular demolition package,
Right, and not being able to wait. You were explaining it really well to all of us earlier.
yeah, so the timing is such that the demolition of the existing facilities will allow us to then move forward with the site work package. So it's an enabling. And, you know, we're going to actually use soils, for instance, from the site work package on the demolition package. So there's some integration that we're working with that too. And then we want to capitalize on that period of time where it's the most conducive to doing that site work, okay? And it's during the summer where we see the most favorable weather. What that's going to allow us to do is then start on the building. Starting when we're starting, it's going to mitigate a lot of winter costs that we normally see because we're getting a lot of that done before winter. And it kind of feeds into what the mayor mentioned about, you know, mitigating costs instead of actually adding cost. So one package supports the next. The other packages that we talked about are mitigating packages so that we have those materials when we need the materials to move forward the project as a whole. So it's kind of this step process that we're going through to make sure that we're going to hit that date next year.
Mr. DeJohn, thank you.
So you said you would have the steel costs, correct, and the roofing costs at the next meeting?
Yes, sir.
And I said earlier that I didn't think that was going to, you know, make a big deal, a couple weeks. So, and also, in answering Mrs. Fagan knows that there's still people working at home. She does know that you can write off some of those taxes from wherever you live, which could mean a decrease in our income tax. So that's what I'm very, very concerned about. If that becomes a permanent situation, which it could very well become a permanent situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions or comments? Okay, roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. DeJohn,
No.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mr. Balestria.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Resolution 2022-29 has been approved. Moving to ordinances 2022-03, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excuse me. Ordinance number 2022-03, an ordinance amending section 559.14 of the Codified Ordinances of the City entitled Waste Container Location and Pickup. Third reading.
Is there a motion to approve?
Are we tabling? Motion to table?
If you'd like to table this, I can make a, if there's a second on a motion to table.
Me. Motion to table, second.
Is there,
Why are we tabling?
The,
No, there's no discussion on motions to table. You have a motion and a second, so now you vote.
Could you explain that, please? I didn't hear all of what you said.
There's a motion on the floor to table, and it's been seconded, so now it's proper to vote.
Mrs. Sabetta,
yes.
Mr. Mano,
No.
Mr. Balestria.
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi,
No.
Mr. DeJohn,
No.
Mrs. Snyder.
no. So that's 4-2.
No.
5.
The motion to table has been defeated.
Okay, now is there a motion to approve?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Mano,
A second.
second by Mr. DeJohn. This is an amendment to the ordinance where many changes and additions were added to section 559.14, A, B, C, D, and E pertaining to trash waste being placed out on tree lawns prior to scheduled days as well as fines attached for those who don't follow the ordinance. This was discussed thoroughly in a Building, Service, and Legislative Committee meeting. Are there any questions from council?
Madam
Madam,
Mrs. Sabetta?
Ladies first.
thank you. The motion to table was due to the fact that at the meeting, though I'm sorry you do not have any minutes, it was recommended that the law director and the prosecutor get together and discuss. Also, what you are looking at here, the 2022-3, there is incorrect sentences. B, Mr. DeJohn thought maybe that should go back in. This was something, I again apologize for you not having the minutes, but, you know, Mrs. Tracy was there, Mr. Monaco, Mr. DeJohn, and it was recommended we revisit.
Mr. Murphy? You can talk.
Supplement that. Yes, there was a lengthy committee meeting of a joint committee about a week or 10 days ago, and at that time it was determined that this and the following ordinance needed some clarification and some work. So personally, I don't think you're ready to vote on this legislation tonight because it's incorrect in a number of different areas. So you know, I would recommend that it be tabled since it is on third reading. And it would be proper to have another motion to table it.
Okay, Mrs. Tracy?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Murphy, why haven't you or Mrs. Sabetta scheduled another meeting? We don't have the minutes. When was the date of the meeting? It was a few weeks
Third,
ago,
the-
2 or
the beginning?
3 weeks ago?
Yes, correct.
So we still don't have the minutes. That's number one. If Mr. Murphy knew, Mr. Murphy, why didn't you assist in, like, working on this to get it?
I am working on it. It's just not completed yet because we
Oh.
don't have the minutes. I think it was since the last council meeting, so I'm thinking.
No, it was before
probably-
that. It was 2 meetings, at least 2 meetings ago.
Okay, whenever it was. The legislation that's before council still is not correct, so, as I said, I recommend that it be tabled.
Madam President?
Yep.
I would just like to answer. I have been asking for the minutes. They were rather long. And like I said, Mrs. Tracy, you were there.
I was there.
I
That's
do.
correct. I don't have the
I'm
minutes either,
doing-
Mrs.
Yeah,
Sabetta.
I'm doing what I can do to get it. But it was recommended that this go on 3 readings. If they did not meet, it was to be tabled. Is that not correct, Mr. DeJohn?
That's correct. Mr. Murphy and the prosecutor, Mr. Vintonio, are working on revising this legislation so it can be enforced by law.
And incidentally, I misspoke. It was March 3rd was the meeting, so it was not since the last
Wait,
most recent council meeting.
it was when?
So at this
March
point,
3rd.
I think we need to find.
Third.
So I'll make a motion to table this.
Okay, motion made by Mr. DeJohn. I need a second.
Second?
Second by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on the motion to table.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mr. Balestria.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes?
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Ordinance number 2022-3 has been tabled. At this time, I'm going to make a motion on ordinance number 2022-4 to table this as well, due to the same reasoning. Do I have a motion? Moved by Mr. Balestria, second
Second.
by
She seconded.
Mrs. Sabetta. Thank you. Roll call on the motion to table ordinance 22-4.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mr. Balestria.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes?
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. This ordinance has now been tabled as well. Ordinance 2022-9, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ordinance 2022-9, an ordinance authorizing change order number 1 with CA Agresta Construction Company for the Ashcroft Neighborhood Pavement Improvements Project, authorizing the closeout of said contract and declaring an emergency. Second reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mr. Mano, second by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes?
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mr. Balestria.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Mano,
Second.
second by Mr. Balestria. This is a change order that was requested by our city engineer for the pavement project that was completed in 2021. The amount is a difference of $43,113.41. I know this was questioned by council, and from now on, it's stated that the council be notified ahead when there's a change order that needs to be approved. We also need to be conscious of our bids that go out so that we don't incur these costs after project completion. Does any member of council have any questions or comments?
Yes, I need Mr. Gerson to
DeJohn.
explain again what the change order was exactly and why it wasn't in the original bid.
Sure. There's two items we'll probably want to discuss on that one. You mentioned the sidewalks, so if I could answer that first, because I think it associates with this project. We did have repair and sidewalks in this program, on this project. About midway through the project, we were notified by AT&T that they were going to be replacing the AT&T lines, which are right underneath the sidewalks or very near the sidewalks. So we did all the sidewalk work, basically, the handicapped ramps that were needed when we replaced the curbs, but we hesitated or didn't do the sidewalks because we knew AT&T was going to come in and start digging them up. So the contractor didn't do the work. He didn't get paid for that work. So that's why we're going to recommend it for the 2022 sidewalk program and be the sidewalks between the handicapped ramps to be completed, so that way that section of the city is complete. So that explains the sidewalk portion of it.
So AT&T did the sidewalks where they put their lines underneath?
Yeah, so typically what happens is when a utility company comes in, gas line, AT&T, any of the other fiber optics, if they go in there and they destroy a sidewalk, they would replace it. Potentially, there's a potential that a sidewalk would be broken, so it would be a sidewalk that we would have paid to repair, and they would have had to tear it out anyways, and they would have repaired it at their cost. So any sidewalk they damage, they replace at their cost. And so I didn't want to go ahead and repair all the sidewalks and potentially repair sidewalks that were already broken and then pay for them and then have AT&T. They would have replaced it anyway, so it was somewhat of a cost savings decision on that. But again, the contractor didn't perform the work, he didn't get paid for it. The change order, the main change order is, so when we went out and did the street, we looked at the condition of the street. When we opened it up, we had more base repair than what we anticipated, so we did some base repair that we needed. And there were areas that we felt that it constituted basically chip sealing. We did that on the street. It was a cost of about $35,000, I believe, on the chip seal. That's the bulk of the change order. The rest are just basically the extra base repair we did and the extra items. The contracts are unit price contracts. If the contractor performs the work, then he gets paid the unit prices. If he doesn't get paid that price. And so that's the bulk of the change order on this project.
Madam President.
Mr. DeJohn?
So chip sealing is something that's out of the ordinary, or
So-
explain to me what that is?
Yeah, so chip sealing is a process we've been using recently. We do have it in all our road programs now. It's just something that we did. This project was primarily, when we looked at it, the pavement itself was in good condition, relatively good condition, the asphalt, but the curbs were being replaced. At that time, we thought the pavement was in good enough shape that we wouldn't do the chip seal, but when we pulled off the asphalt, we were able to see that. It's a preventative maintenance, basically. From what I understand, a lot of communities, and I know Mayfield Heights used to do it as a surface treatment. It sprays down a thick tar, and then you put a gravel layer down, and it basically seals up the joints of the concrete below. It's a good base. We've been using it. One of the first times we used it as that material was on Oakville Road. If you remember, Oakville was a reconstruct when we first came in back in 2017. We were able to resurface that road, and we chip sealed it. It does a good base repair or seals up a lot of the joints, and it's a very cost-effective solution. In this case, we didn't anticipate it, but when we opened up the roads, we saw that it needed to be done.
So this goes on to the pavement underneath? Is that what you're saying?
So what we use it for is, so when we take the asphalt off, most of our streets are a concrete base. In many cases, they were concrete before the asphalt was put on.
Correct.
And so one of the first treatments that you would do to a concrete street is repair the concrete you see and then overlay it. So in this case, that was done, I've not been here since they did Ashcroft last time, but I understand that may have been done twice. So when we peel the asphalt off, you're able to see or expose the concrete base that was there before. We do full depth repair, which would be cutting out joints that we see, or sometimes it's a slab, so it might be a whole lane. And then there's a lot of spots that are not wide enough for a joint repair. Typically, joint repairs are 4 feet wide, and you would pay, I think our estimate's $80 a square yard. But if you have a joint that's maybe 6 inches wide, or if you have areas where just the surface of the concrete is spalling, you do a chip seal. And what the chip seal does, it seals that concrete, and then the gravel performs kind of a base that the asphalt adheres to from there. So it's a very good process. Like I say, we've been using it. In this case, we didn't see it needing to be used. We did it on Gates Mills Boulevard. That was a change order we did. In that case, we had a lot of base repair. When we got out there wasn't base repair needed, so we chip sealed it. So that's
It seems like it's something that would be standard operating procedure when doing these roads.
In this case, we're going to be using it on all the streets that we asphalt moving forward. Just at this point, if I don't do it and they come back, the problem you get is when you peel that asphalt off, you don't have a lot of time to come back. And we've had one process that worked. I don't recommend that process because getting on the phone is very difficult. But on all the streets that I'm doing, where I'm doing resurfacing, which we call mill and fill, which we've been doing many years in here, I'm going to include it. Now, if I happen to pull that asphalt off and it's not needed, I just won't perform it. But for the most part, it'll probably be performed in this case.
And we won't see any more change orders, correct?
On this project, you will not.
I'm talking about future projects.
I can't guarantee no
If there-
change orders
and
at all,
if there
but
are-
what I'll
and it-
tell you is you'll know before I perform.
Okay.
If I've got to stop the contractor, I'll stop the contractor.
Even if you have to text me. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Carson. All right. Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. Balstria.
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes?
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Ordinance 2022-4 has been approved. Moving to ordinance 2022-10.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ordinance number 2022-10, an ordinance authorizing change order number 1 with DeJoya Suburban Excavating, LLC, for the 2021 Sidewalk Improvement Program and declaring an emergency. Second reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Moved.
Moved by Mrs. Sabetta,
Second.
second by Mr. Balestrea. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mr. Balstria.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes?
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Balestria, second by Mr. Mano. This is a change order request from DeJoya Suburban Excavating for an additional $49,367.85 for the replacement of sidewalk blocks on a project that was completed also in 2021. And I believe Mr. Gerson has just explained that to us.
So I'm a little,
Wait,
Madam
wasn't
President.
even done. Go ahead, Mr. DeJohn.
Can you explain that to me again?
Sure, I'll tap.
So AT&T replaced sidewalks, so you didn't do that area, correct?
So different project. That was the ABC streets that we were just referring to. That was CA Agresta was the contractor. So this is the 2020-2021 sidewalk program.
Okay.
So this was on, see if I can remember the streets now, so how good my memory is. It was Longwood, Temple, Mayland, I believe. It was Sunset, Washington, Elmwood, Edgewood, Maplewood, and Ridgebury. I think I've got all the streets in there. So the contractor, we walked the streets, we counted up blocks that we saw. Typically, we're counting up blocks that are cracked or that you can see a visible, basically trip hazard. Normally, we can replace a sidewalk block that if it's tilted one, typically one's tilted, so we fix the one. In some cases, you've got to fix both or multiple, try to get that done. In this case, the contractor started on Mayland, then went to Longwood, then went to Temple. At that time, we were tracking pretty well on the actual quantities that the contractor was doing. We were counting them, getting through. When they got to Sunset, Sunset, I believe, was the next, it was either Washington or Sunset. Washington went well. Sunset was the third to last street, and we entered a lot of blocks that basically you took out one, the next one was deteriorated underneath, and so you had multiple blocks you had to do to put the contract back, or the concrete sidewalk back in place. At that point, we already had Sunset torn open. When we went to Edgewood and Elmwood, we also ran into that on the concrete street, which is, I believe, Elmwood. And so we ran over quantities on it. Again, the contractor was, whatever he did is what he's being paid for. If he didn't perform work, he wasn't being paid for it. So this is a balance, closing out the contract based on what was performed on those streets.
So he ran into problems, is what you're saying? or-
So basically, when we went down Sunset originally back probably 6 months before that, when we counted blocks, there were blocks that we thought we could get away with one block replacement, and there were 2 or 3 blocks that had to be replaced to get the trip hazard, or there were blocks on Sunset specifically that the concrete was basically deteriorated. When you pulled up one, the next one would break. So I don't know if it was a thinner structure that was done on Sunset at one point, or maybe the concrete was not in good shape at that time, but when you pull out one and the next one comes out, you basically have to replace it.
And this is something you couldn't estimate when you marked the blocks,
I
correct?
wish I could, and I didn't. I know on the 2022 road sidewalk program, we're gonna try to put in a little extra in there for those anticipated areas. But again, what needs to come out, we'll do, and if we get to a point where we're running over, we'll let you know, and we'll either not do that street or get your authorization to move forward on it.
And Mrs. Fagan, what was the cost of our program last year? Is it 250,000 now with this extra?
No, the contract last year was for just over 178,000, so this would bring the total contract to 227,647.
Okay, thank you.
Later.
Mr. Balstraya?
Dan, and then the effect, because we had to do those extra blocks, it just made sense to just finish the street as well?
Correct, yeah.
So we would end up short without finishing Sunset, because of the extra work they had to do. We can't cut it off like 3/4 of the way down the street or 7/8 of the way down the street and say, okay, you stop here, we've reached our 200,000 limit. So they went ahead and finished.
Yeah,
the
unfortunately, in
remainder of the street.
hindsight, had they started on Sunset and at Elmwood, we would have determined that we were over those quantities that we had, and we could have adjusted either cutting back on one of the streets, but those are the last streets you had. When you started opening up, there you were. So you could stop halfway down the street. That's a decision that obviously you'll make.
So a little of that
Quicker in
cost
the
was
future.
just to finish the street.
It's not a little cost, it's $50,000.
Wow.
It's a lot of blocks.
Yeah, they add up rather quickly. Their prices.
What is the cost of a block estimated?
They were $8. I think we were running about $8 to $9 a square foot. Each block is, if it's a 5x5, which not all of them are 5x5, some are 7x5, depending on how they were done. So you're 25 times almost 10, you're $250 a block, real quick. It adds up quick.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Balstraya?
Yes?
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes. This ordinance has been approved. Ordinance number 2022-12, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ordinance number 2022-12, an ordinance amending section 1511.21 of the Codified Ordinances of the City titled Key Box Requirements to increase the lockbox fee. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, second by Mr. Mano. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mr. Balstria.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Move.
Moved by Mrs. Tressi, second by Mr. DeJohn. We received a memorandum from Fire Chief Elliott on a fee increase for the residential lockbox program. This program has been around since 2012 and has seen no fee increases since the inception. They are requesting the one-time lockbox fee be raised from $30 to $35, and the program has been a success, and they will continue to install upwards of 30 to 40 boxes per year. Did any council member have any questions for the chief, or? No? Good. Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mr. Balstria.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes, ordinance number 2022-12 has been approved. Moving to motions. Motion A, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Motion to authorize the sale of vehicles and equipment through Carmax. The first vehicle is a 2015 Ford Explorer, VIN number 1FM5K8AR8FGC26729. The mileage is 93,165. The second vehicle is a 2009 Ford Fusion, VIN number 3FAHPO7Z89R2. 12618, and the mileage is 73,057.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, second by Mr. Mano. This is typically what we do when the mileage of our city vehicles exceed a certain limit. Mrs. Fagan, what department are these vehicles from?
These are actually the same two vehicles that council approved for, to be sold last meeting, but you approved them through Gov Deals. The police department has been talking to other departments and thought it would be more advantageous to go through Carmax for these.
Okay. Mr. DeJohn.
Drew Carmax versus auction?
Correct, Carmax would be purchasing them, and then Carmax would turn around and sell them. But in conversations, my understanding is conversations with other police departments, they were realizing they were getting a much better price from Carmax than they were taking vehicles through Gov Deals.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Are there any other, Mrs. Tressi?
Mrs. Fagan, will they get a check from Carmax for these two vehicles?
Correct,
In the
yes.
amount, what will the amount be that they'll receive?
It depends on what that agreed-upon sale price is.
Oh, they haven't determined what that sales price is yet.
Whatever the final sale price from Carmax, we'll get a check from that, and then they will turn around and resell the vehicles.
So,
Mr. DeJohn.
so I guess my question is why wouldn't you put them up for auction and Carmax attends the auction and bids on them?
That's a business model for Carmax, and I'm not making up their business model. I'm not sure why. I know that the police department came to us.
I mean, I would
and
ask
said-
Carmax
was
that.
looking that this was a better avenue, that the city would receive more additional revenues in this manner. So the feeling was, let's try it, let's see how it goes, let's see if those prices are higher than we probably would have gotten at auction, and maybe it gives us another option in the future going forward.
And you said there's other departments that do it this way?
Other cities, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mr. Balstria.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes, motion A has been approved. Motion B, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Motion to approve the recommendation by the Public Works and Services Committee to solicit bids for the 2022 road program to include Sunset, Iroquois, Edgewood, Elmwood, Woodhawk, Ridgeberry, and the solicitation of bids for the supplemental 2022 road program that will include Fairhaven, Ashdale, Eastondale, Long Ridge, and Marshfield.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Balestria, second by Mr. Mano. This was a recommended out of the Public Works and Service meeting, Mr. Balestria, Mrs. Tressi, and Mr. Gerson. We heard from Mr. Balestria, and I know Mr. Gerson would like to speak on this.
Sure, I'll try to answer some of the questions that came up during the, it was the Public Works Committee report. Before you, or what we're asking for, is to solicit bids for the 2022 road program. I don't know if you got the emails that I sent out today trying to break down each street. We had the meeting on last Tuesday. On Wednesday, I went out and I drove the streets in the morning, looked at curbs, looked at drive aprons, things that I could see, manholes, catch basins, concrete repairs that you can see. And then also went back to the office and calculated up how much square yards are for each street. So the first one, Sunset resurfacing. So what that entails, there's a couple things. So the first thing, you go in, you plane off the asphalt that's on Sunset. You try to do what they call chasing the concrete or chasing the base. Typically, there's 3 inches of asphalt on there. So that's the first item, item number one. Butt joint grinding, that's basically butting up to existing asphalt. So down on Sunset, you have down at Ridgeberry, you would also have on Maplewood where you're butting up to existing pavement. And then the next 2 items are the asphalt that goes back on, and we'll get back to that in a minute. So I want to jump down to items 5, 6, 7, 8.
Excuse me, Mr. Gerson.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. DeJohn, Mr. Manna,
If
we
you
have
don't
this
have
in front of us this evening. Exactly the paper, exactly what he's reading off of should be right in front of you.
It's
It's stapled together, and the first sheet is Sunset.
right here.
Perfect. Everybody, thank you.
Did
Sorry.
you find that? I'm sorry. Okay, so items 5, 6, 7, and 8. So these are where we get in. So we've got the base repair, the base concrete exposed. We can see where the repairs are. We have full depth repair. We have 557 square yards to do. Chip seal, we have the same amount going back down on the street, so we have chip seal included, so we don't have to ask for a change order for that. Again, if we get it exposed and for some reason we don't need to do it, we just won't perform it. I can obviously let you know before I make that decision if you'd want, but again, I don't want to spend money that doesn't need to be done or shouldn't need to be done. We also have partial depth repair, which in this case, on the asphalt streets, you get basically it's a grinder, and you grind the joints down to where you get solid concrete and you replace it with asphalt. Partial depth repairs, many cities do them. We have 278 square yards. The full depth repair and the partial depth repair, they're based on 5% of the street on the full depth and 2.5 on the partial depth. We've been using those numbers for 3 or 4 years, and we've come up with, when we look at the street, we can generally tell that we need that much repair on that street. Those are the kind of the unknowns where you get in when you open it up. Do you have more? Do you have less? But generally speaking, we're pretty close on those numbers. We have catch basin. So if we go down, we count the street, we have items 9 and 10 are catch basins. So we have a total of 27 catch basins on that street. We would adjust those catch basins so that when we're done paving, they would be just slightly lower than the asphalt so that they go in. We estimate that 10 of those would need what we call reconstruction. So reconstruction on a catch basin, you basically go down to where basically the blocks or the bricks are falling apart, you rebuild it back up so it has stable base. Manholes adjusted or castings reset, we have 27 manholes on the street, and we would adjust all those to the right elevation to the street, and I can explain that if you want. Monument, water valves, we kind of put those in together. There's 13. Miscellaneous metal is so if you have a casting that's broken, or when they remove it, it's cracked and broken, or if it's unusable, you basically replace the casting. Castings generally run 400 or 500 pounds, depending on how many castings you got to replace. So we put in a number of 10,000 pounds it's kind of based on how many manholes and catch basins we have. Again, if we need that many, we would order them, and he gets paid for how many pounds he has. He brings in the pound weight, and that's how those castings get paid. We do have striping included. In the past, we always had the service department stripe, but I know they're getting busy, and I'd like to go ahead and have those streets striped with the stop lines and the crosswalks when they're done. It kind of finishes up the project instead of having the service department come in and stripe it. Curb replacement. So this is where we can drive down the street and we can pretty much see where most of the concrete's crumbled up. It's not a complete curb replacement throughout the street, but it's a lineal foot that I've gone through and I've looked at and I've kind of counted up, and I have a pretty good number on that. And then we have concrete drive replacement, 6-inch concrete drives. So again, what we do on concrete drives, if they're greater than 2 inches above the finished surface of asphalt, or if they're buried below the asphalt, we would want to replace them. So if you go down a lot of streets, you'll see some people that put asphalt up there and there's a little bump there. They do that because every time they come in their street or in their driveway, the driveway's higher and they jar their teeth out. And so they put the asphalt, which sounds good for them. The problem is when it's in the gutter line, that little bit of asphalt holds the water back and you get standing water. It's not good for the street. So we try to get those driveways adjusted so they're not, either getting buried with water or being too high that they jar their teeth out. Mobilization and traffic control, we have a budgetary number in there. The contractor provides what that is, but I've estimated that mobilization, that's basically a contractor showing up on site, getting his equipment there. He wants $5,000 for that. Traffic control, I have $2,500. That's him putting a flagger out, making sure residents can get through. A lot of these streets are, one lanes at some point when they're doing the base repair. That's, it takes a little bit of time to do base repair if you're doing a certain spot. And then we have it in there, we have a discretionary allowance. So this kind of helps us if we have 271 lineal feet of curb that we end up replacing. This allows us to do that without going over budget. It's only used on the items that we have in the quantities, and it's only used if the contractor does the work. So we went through, and the way I put together prices is we bid another community earlier this year, and we had 5 or 6 bidders. What I did is I took the average of the 3 lowest bidders, and I took that average price, and that's what I generated my numbers for. So I'm trying to get up-to-date numbers based on what I feel the contractor will be charging. And so once we have the quantities, we multiply that by the labor and material price, and that gives you the total price that we expect a contractor to come back with. That would be the same, all the ones that say resurfacing would be the same, so that process is done. Well, one other thing, on Sunset, there's no sidewalks, okay? And the reason is we just got done passing a change order where we did the sidewalks, so we shouldn't have any sidewalks on there. If you pan down through to some of the streets over on Fairhaven, we haven't been over there, so you have sidewalk in there. So I was able to drive through and I'm able to count, okay, we've got one block, I see it's a trip hazard. I didn't get out and walk everyone. Again, I did this on a Wednesday right after the meeting to try to get these numbers to you. So the process would be is that if you approve this motion, we would do it in 2 projects, and I'll get to the concrete streets in a minute, but I want to kind of explain the process. We would go out for bid, we'd tell the contractor, hey, this is the amount of work you have to do. We don't give them the individual unit prices, but we tell them what we feel the engineer's estimate is. In other words, what we feel it should cost, what their number should come back as. I like to not be the low bidder. Many times, sometimes I am. And what happens if I'm the low bidder, that means that all the contractors have come in over my price. And by ordinance, by city law, you can't award the contract if it comes in greater than 10% of that price. So, real quick, if I did $100,000 was a project and it came in 110.01% over that, we couldn't award it. And so what would happen, I think we did this last year, with the sidewalk program. We went out and bid, and the numbers came in higher than expected. So we cut back East Minor, West Minor, we rebid the streets. So if it comes in over that 10%, we must rebid it. Well, we don't have to rebid it. We have to not award the contract. Okay, if you want to rebid it based on, we would have to readjust and see where the numbers came in. Let's say, I estimated that the asphalt was 110 dollars a square yard, and it came in 170, okay? And all the other numbers are right. Now we could say, okay, why is the asphalt higher? Well, maybe the oil prices spiked, yesterday or tomorrow or in that week window or the 2-week window when we bid it. If it comes in within either lower than my number or within 109.99 or 110% of my, you can't award it. And typically, we would recommend award on that. We would have all the bids, we'd know how many we've got, we'd say, hey, here's everybody else, here's the low bidder. We do a little bit of research into their quality of work. Do they have any non-paid taxes? Do they have any liens against them, that kind of thing. So that's where you get the recommendation. That's what we've done in the past. So basically what would happen is this would come back at some point once we have the bids and once we've evaluated. And in my one email, I recommended that if you authorize it tonight for the road program 1 and 2, we would look to advertise April 14th. It would have to go in the paper another week, so April 21st, those are both Thursdays. And then we would open bids on April 29th. We typically do it on a Friday. That gives us an extra day to go ahead and make sure we got the 2-week window. And then we reevaluate the bids. They're closed bids or sealed. Many times Karen, sometimes Shanisha helps me open them. We open them public meeting, residents or contractors show up, we read the bids, and then we go ahead and make sure all the numbers add up. And then that comes to as a recommendation to you. On the concrete streets, so on the first road program, there's 2 concrete streets. Currently concrete, one is,
Elmwood.
sure I got the right one, I apologize.
Elmwood?
Elmwood, yeah, I always get Elmwood or Edgewood back. So on Elmwood, that's on 1, 2, 3, 4th page in, I believe.
Yep.
So on Elmwood's a little interesting. If you go down Elmwood, there's 3 intersections. There's Maplewood, there's Oakville, and there's Edgewood. Those 3 intersections are concrete now, and they're not broken up. They're in good shape. Those intersections were done at some point. And so here, and then also on Elmwood, there's a section that's asphalt. There's 2 sections of asphalt. One is just south of Maplewood, and then one is just at the intersection of Ridgeberry, the turnout in Ridgeberry. So the concrete sections we can look at and we can see. We can count up the joints, we can count up the base repairs. So basically, if we come in, there's a joint that's spalling out 4 feet times the width of the road, we kind of have a good sense of what we're going to get into in there. If we have an area that's, there's a joint and then there's a big crack through it and the catch basin's dropped in, that's typically what we would call a panel repair. So in here I have slab repair and joint repair. I have them as the same price. Sometimes you'll get a contractor that wants more money for a joint repair because a joint repair is 4 feet where a slab is 10 feet, so he gets a little bit of better numbers for a slab repair, but not always. So I've estimated those at $80 a square yard. So again, I have certain numbers in here for each of those things, the things I can see. On a concrete street, I can see most of it. You may open up a panel, and the reason why it's cracked is it's all washed out underneath. That's something I can't see, but if we went through and we opened that up, that would be something we'd have to get your authorization to do something different for. I did have asked the county does maintenance on our sanitary sewers. I've asked them to provide reports on the streets that we have in this program. If there's any repairs that are ongoing, I just got those today. I'll look at those. If there are any repairs, those could be reimbursed through the county on those repairs, and we'd let you know what those repairs would be once I've looked at those. So again, one of the things that we're going to do on the concrete section, it's a little bit different than the mill and fill. So one of the things that we want to do is we want to keep that curb reveal where it currently is. And so what we do is we go in there with a milling machine, very similar to the milling machine that takes the asphalt off. And what we do is in the curb, we have them milled down about 2.5 inches at the curb line, right up against the curb. And then as he tapers out, and typically milling machines are 7 feet wide, when he tapers out, he goes to a zero or maybe a 1/2 inch mill. And so he's milling on an angle. And so that what you're doing is when you do your repairs for the concrete, you build it back up to that level. And then you build your asphalt back up. So when your asphalt goes in at the curb, you're meeting back with where the curb currently was. So again, if you're driving down the road and you live on Elmwood and you have a 2-inch curb reveal, and many of those driveways are in good shape, you look at them, you'll have that same reveal, so you're not impeding the water going up and down the street, and you're not also making it so it's zero, so there's no curb there, and so the water just gathers in there. So that's how you able to keep the water flowing up and down the street. We have 1 1/4 inch asphalt, and I have it as 1.5. It's actually 1 3/4 surface course on that. So it's basically we're putting back in 3 inches of asphalt back in on top of the street once the concrete base is repaired. And so streets that haven't been done as part of the road program or as a sidewalk program that have sidewalks, those sidewalks would be repaired as part of the program. If they've already been in the 2022 or the 2021 sidewalk program, no need to include prices in there. So that's what we would look to do. Trying to give you one more scenario. Why not put 5,000 yards of base repair in there, just in case? Well, the problem is that you also can get in trouble if you, on your contract, you tell the contractor, I got 5,000 square yards, and then I say, we're only gonna do 5 square yards. He's already built in his profit in that, he wants profit. So you wanna be pretty close on those quantities so you get a fair bid, you get an equal bid, and so the contractor knows what he's going into and what he's expecting to do and how much work he's gonna have. He has employees that he has to keep busy. If he feels it's a 90-day job, and then you cut it back to a 15-day job, what's he gonna do with his work for another 60 days or 75 days? So that's the process of what we've been doing. I'm open to try to answer questions. Maybe I've answered them all.
Later.
Go ahead.
Can I just
Mr.
want to interject,
Balestria.
because Mr. Dijon had a question about the sidewalks, and if you remember when we set up the sidewalk program, we started in the northwest corner, and we did those sidewalks, and we were going to do it in quadrants. So if those sidewalks already, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, those sidewalks happen to be done, obviously when the road comes up, we don't do it. But if the road is slated to be done and the sidewalks have not been done yet, that's when the sidewalks are done. So like now Elmwood, Edgewood, those sidewalks
Are done.
are completed. They're on the road program for next year.
So Elmwood and Edgewood would be this year.
Yeah,
The
this year.
sidewalks were done.
So they're already done.
Last year, so we don't
So
need
I
to do
think,
sidewalks there.
I think that's what you were asking, why. So if the road program,
The ABC streets were the difference.
Right,
Sorry, I
right.
didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah,
yes,
why were they different is what I was asking.
because if you recall, we said we do them in quadrants, and then that way you don't have two contractors also working on the same street. Necessarily, you'd have one guy doing sidewalk repair and one guy trying to do,
Is that how it's done?
Yeah, so since we started the sidewalk program, with the exception of the ABC streets, and explain why that was, if we do a road, we repair the sidewalks as part of the road program. And so that we're getting through the city, because we were planning on going through and doing those streets eventually, but instead of going back and having, this year doing the sidewalks, and then next year coming in and, well, instead of doing the street and not doing the sidewalks, and then come in next year and tear up the sidewalks, the residents will say, well, why are you, tearing out too? So when we do a road, we do the sidewalks, with the exception of the ABC streets, and that was.
And
because we
it's
had
the
that.
people that do the sidewalks that,
No,
it's not the contractor that does the street,
It's
correct?
the contractor that does the road would do sidewalks during the road program. And so on,
That is that contractor, does both.
correct, yeah. And what happens is,
And that's what I'm asking, why, with ABC
with
streets,
ABC, that was.
why wasn't that done?
Yeah, with ABC, it was the AT&T, and AT&T didn't tell us. We got the plans in the building department. I said, what are these? And And so in that case, I made a decision, why spend the money when you're going to get them perhaps replaced at some point? Now, you know, it may have been 2 sidewalk blocks, but that's $500 right there.
Got it, yeah.
If they were running fiber optics?
They were replacing the fiber optics and
Yeah.
their cable. That was a planned thing. We try to coordinate with utility companies, try to find out what's going. Gas is a typical that, you know, as soon as you get a street, you ask them for a 5-year plan, and you generally get it right after you start the street. So we try to do all that at once. Sometimes that doesn't work out. We didn't go into the sidewalk program. I can if that's on the next motion, so we can wait for after that motion if you don't have more questions.
Dan, do you want me to add a motion to put the grant on for the county to perform the spot repairs for Ridgeberry, or do you want that as a separate motion tonight?
Yeah, so I think in the motion, I think we mentioned Ridgeberry. So
Right.
I can explain that. There's 2 grants every year the county puts out what they call maintenance money. And so they ask, hey, are there any county roads that you guys are going to be doing work for? And if you're doing the work, if you ask the year before, so typically it happens October, they say, hey, if you're going to be doing work to any of the county roads, we will reimburse you the cost of the materials that you pay. And so what we do is we look at, last year we did Cedar. Cedar we looked at and we did some spot repairs on Cedar, and the material costs, so basically the asphalt, the tack coat, any of the materials that we got reimbursed for from the county. And so in October, we put in an estimate. We say, hey, boy, we'd like to do Cedar Road because we know it's got some repairs. We ask for the money, and if we get the money, we typically include that in the road program, and that was done last year. In this case, we put in for money on Ridgeberry, and the county streets are Lander, Cedar, Gates Mills, and Ridgeberry. Those are your county streets within the city. Obviously, Gates Mills we did last year, Cedar we did last year, Lander we've done in past years. And so Ridgeberry, if you drive down Ridgeberry, there's a lot of bumps, bumps. And so we went down, we measured up how many bumps, and we put a price to it, and we asked the county for material reimbursement on that. So they've authorized us up to $40,000 in material replacement. We have to put it in a contract. We can't go out with our service department. They don't allow us to do it. It has to be a publicly bid so they know the prices are legitimate. And then you would pay for the labor and they would reimburse you the material. In that case, I'm estimating that labor prices would be $35,000, material prices would be $40,000. So if we do $75,000 worth of work, we'll get $40,000 of that back. If material prices are really high this year on that, maybe the labor prices are $25,000 and we get still only $40,000 back. You don't have to spend $35,000. It's not like a 50-50 or anything like that. So we'd like to add that to the road program, the 2022 road program. If you decide not to, then it's money you're sitting there that you have a street that bump, and you're still driving. The other grant that's been discussed is we just got this, it was right before the Public Works Committee. They also have what they call a 50-50 grant, and we used that on Gates Mills Boulevard last year. The county says, again, if you have a county road that you're going to do work for, you can apply for a project up to $250,000. So if you spend $500,000, they'll give you $250,000. It's called a 50-50 because they'll give you up to $250,000. The only problem is if you spend $1 million, they're only going to give you $250,000. It's maxed out at $250,000. If you spend $400,000, they'll give you $200,000. At the Public Works meeting, we briefly discussed that, and I said, okay, we just got done doing Gates Mills. It's in pretty good shape. We just got done doing repairs on Cedar. We have repairs that we want to do on Ridgeberry, and at the time, at the Public Works meeting, I didn't have the approval of that. I was waiting for the county to say, yes, you've been approved to do that work. We recently got that, but we had this 50-50 now.
Is there a deadline on the 50-50, Dan?
Yeah, so the deadline is April 9th. So April 9th, you have to put in the application. It's a simple one-page application. You basically say, hey, this is what we'd like to do, give them a description, give them a rough number of estimate of what you feel it's going to cost, and you can do it in either 2023 or 2024. They may choose when you're gonna do it. In other words, if they have a bunch of projects that everybody has 2023 and they feel your project's not important, they may kick you to 2024. But again, the one project that they talked about in the Public Works was putting a left turn at Geesey and Ridgeberry. So you'd widen the street, put in a left turn signal, stripe it. I'll put together that estimate and share it with you, but if you don't apply by April 9th, then you don't get money, and it's not guaranteed you'll get the money. They'll evaluate and feel if it's a worthwhile project, but my guess is that cost is probably anywhere from $300,000 to $400,000 by the time you replace the lights with poles and turn signals, do a little bit of widening. It's all within right of way, so it could be done, but it really depends if it's a meritable project that you want to pursue. If you get the money, you'd like to do it. If you don't get the money, then you kick it down the road till another day.
Would that include over the bridge in Ridgeberry? Like what portion of Ridgeberry?
So it would basically be just at Geesey and Ridgeberry, so we'd have to calculate what the turn lane would be required, but it's probably,
Bridge, you know, where you turn left,
Yeah,
people
Probably
drive,
to
go
50.
around and.
yeah. Okay.
probably a 50, 60-foot turn lane, which will give you a stacking of 4 or 5 cars. And basically what's happening, from what I'm understanding, is someone's going
On the tree line.
west down
West.
Ridgeberry, and they stop to turn left into Geesey. And people drive into tree lawns around them. It's an
Right.
unsafe, first of all, people going around. And then you also have the same effect if you're going, maybe to a lesser extent, it's not that many houses, but if you're going eastbound on Ridgeberry, making that left turn into Geesey. And so what you would, right now you see it's either green, so you go, or it's yellow or red, you stop. What you would typically see on this is you'd see a center turn lane, and so you'd see either green go, or you'd have a green arrow left, and at that point, the traffic opposite would be turning left into that, and there'd be a certain timing, and then basically the through lanes would be green at some point. And so it's a project that was suggested. It sounds like it has merit, but obviously, short notice for you, but we just got the application for it. I had to be right before the Public Works meeting, maybe a day or so.
Is this
But we
something
can wait on that.
I was going to say, is this something we can wait for the next meeting for the two motions?
When is the next meeting?
The 11th.
No, it'll be after the
So
deadline.
we'd have to do something, but what I can do is I can send it to administration, and basically it's a thumbs up, thumbs down. Do you want to make the application? If you know, it's not costing much to do an application.
It's not a project that won't be done this year.
It
It'll be
would,
done
yeah,
in
it would be a
23.
2023 at the
So we
earliest,
can
or
still add the
2024.
motion, I believe, to the agenda tonight. If council approves it, you can go ahead with the application. We don't have to do the project, but at least the application's in, is the way I see it. For 23, if everybody's in. Like,
Yeah, now, if there's
Yeah.
other projects that you feel that would be better on those county roads, please send me an email or send staff an email. I could share them with you. But we have some time. It's not a,
yeah, we've all,
it'll probably take me a day of time to do the application,
Council approval will apply.
maybe a little more.
we,
Hold on a second.
So,
So it's the motion.
I'd vote on the motion.
Yeah, let's get
You can
that.
apply for the grant if you want. You don't need council
Okay.
authorization to do that. right.
I'll share all that with you.
Right,
before
but
I
you're
do
not
this.
going to do the job until 23
Correct, yeah.
or 24.
got to
If
put
we
the
get money.
application in, so there's no.
Sure.
So we could put a motion in and.
If you want to, you don't need to.
But we've always done that. Why make them do the work if we're not going to vote for it?
Why wouldn't we?
Yeah,
It's a one-page application.
okay.
If I could get the information to you, I'll share it with you. If you have questions,
fine.
please give me a call.
He's
My phone's
just going to apply for it.
usually
We don't
always
know
on.
if we'll get it. Probably don't have to do the motion.
Yeah, but we've,
I'm sorry. Can I say something?
Please.
Madam President? We're applying for grants all the time without council permission but once, authorization, I should say. But once it comes up to accept it, then that's when we come to council. So, because we're always applying for grants.
okay.
I guess that's a go-ahead to apply for the grant. then.
I'll provide the information before I do so. If you have questions, just feel free to
We don't
reach
need a
out to me.
motion.
And I just, Madam President. Thank you. I just have one more question. Do you anticipate any overage charges on this work, or?
I hope not, sir, but if I do, I will come
Just
to
wanna
you
get
first.
Get it in the minutes.
I'll come to you and the mayor first. Maybe the mayor 1 second before, but I don't know how that goes.
So we have chip sealing on everything?
We have chip
and we're
sealing on
gonna-
here, yes. You know, the things that are unknowns, the things when you open up and you can't see. I wish I could see under the road, I just can't, but I've been doing it, and I've been pretty close on these pretty consistently over the years. We try to do the work that needs done.
So is that in the bid that, like if somebody comes in to do work in my house and they tell me the remodel job is gonna be $200,000 and all of a sudden it turns into 250, don't they take a loss?
I don't know your contract, but these are unit price contracts.
Yeah, but
so-
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Is that written in the contract somewhere that?
Go ahead. Mr. Murphy has his
Mr.
hand up.
Murphy?
It depends on the contract. If it's a lump sum contract, they will do the job for the price that they quoted. If it's a unit price contract, they will do the job based on the unit prices, and if they exceed that, then it's up to you to pay it. It depends on the contract.
So this
What
is
Dan's
unit
been,
price?
what Dan has been talking about is basically unit prices where the units have been exceeded, so that's where the change orders come from.
Can we get a lump sum contract?
You could, but you're probably going to pay for it because the contractor's going to have to make sure he can perform that work for that amount of money. So you're going to get build up in the price to cover them in case the work exceeds what they anticipated it would be. Most construction contracts, maybe not most, but I would say most construction contracts are usually unit price, especially if you can calculate what the units would be.
The other thing you have is that, your question, could you do a lump sum contract on a street? Well, okay, let's just take Sunset, for example. If they do exactly what I have on here, the square yards, we don't have any overruns or under it, and we had it as a lump sum, they would get the $495,335. But if they, let's say I overestimated, said, boy, I think we need 10,000 pounds, we only use 5,000, if it's a lump sum, they're getting paid for the 10,000. And so it goes both ways on that, and
They make
so
more.
I think the fairest way and I do it in all three of my cities, I don't speak for other cities, but my 3 cities, we all do unit price contracts and they work out generally well. The contractor gets paid for what he does, doesn't get paid for what he doesn't do. And we have those prices, so if we have to do one more lineal feet of curb, I have it a price in here, I can tell you that it's gonna cost us $35 more for one more lineal feet of curb. If I had a lump sum contract and we found that we needed one more lineal feet, what's the price? I don't know. Whatever he says it is then.
Mr. Bellistreo?
So since we have Ridgeberry in the motion for the 2022 road program, we need to add to the motion or amend this motion to include the county grant that Mr. Gerson spoke of, which is the spot repairs, I believe, right, Dan?
I think the council agenda I have, it has Ridgeberry in the motion B.
It does.
It does.
It
does,
says
it does.
Ridgeberry.
So we would need to say that we're also including the grant to perform some of this work from the county.
That won't be bid out till 2023, correct?
The work on Ridge, so the turn signal on Ridgeberry has no deadline. We don't even have a grant for it. What we have is for spot repairs on Ridgeberry, so basically the bumps. We've been authorized by the county to spend that money.
Sorry.
The only question is,
So,
do
this
you
year.
want to go ahead and perform it? If you do, then I would include that in the 2022 road program. We would bid it out for unit prices, and then we would be able to tell what that is. So that would be, included would be my recommendation. I wouldn't do it as a separate project. It's too small. You don't, having a contractor come out for 75,000 on that street, the mobilization would eat you alive on that. So he's already going to be out there, he or she's already going to be out there doing work on streets that are adjacent, he just moves to the next street to do the work.
How do you want to
Mr.
amend the motion?
So I would motion to amend, motion B to include the grant program from the county to do spot repairs on Ridgeberry, to be added to motion B. I don't think I need to include the dollar amounts, but those are already specified.
Okay, is there a second to include the grant program from the county to do spot repairs on Ridgeberry? Second by Mr. Mano. All in favor? Oh, we're going to do a roll call.
Mr. Balstria.
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes?
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Okay, so motion B has been amended. Is there a roll call, or is there a motion to approve?
Do that already? No, we did.
No, we didn't approve it.
Amend it.
Okay, move.
Moved by Mr.
Oh, yeah, we did amend it. Amended.
Second,
by Mr.
as
Balestria.
amended.
Second by Mr. DeJohn. Now roll call to, or roll call the motion to approve.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mr. Balstria.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. This motion B has been approved as amended. Moving to motion C, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Motion to approve the recommendation by the Public Works and Services Committee to solicit bids for the 2022 sidewalk program to include East Minor, West Minor, Orchard Heights, Maplewood, Bonnie Lane, Golden Gate, Ridgeberry, Adena, Ashcroft, Beam, Cantwell, Drayton, Euston, Fulham, and Gladwin.
Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Mano, second by Mrs. Sabetta. This was also recommended by the Public Works and Service meeting. I think we've heard from Mr. Gerson. Do you want to talk?
Just real
No.
quickly, I'm a little parched, but anyways, the 2022 road sidewalk program, I haven't walked the streets that we're proposing in there. I will do that before the next council meeting, and so in there I have, if able to fit in the budget. so I
Budget
need to-
permits, right.
I need to walk those sidewalks, so I'll get the numbers, and I'll be able to tell you, okay, we've got 20 on this block, 20 on this street, 20 on this street, and then we can come back at the next council meeting so you know what streets would be in that bidding out, because again, we'd bid out on April 14th, so we have time right before to, so you know what's going out for bid.
I just have a quick question for you. You said that on the ABC streets, there was AT&T work done on those sidewalks. Were there a lot of blocks that were repaired by them?
With all the snow, I haven't been out there, but I'll stop out there before when we do it. and
So we
see
might
what's
get
been
some
done.
credit, sort of, not having to
Well,
do those.
Yeah, if the blocks are in good shape and they've been repaired, we won't replace them, so.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Madam President.
Mr. DeJohn.
And the change order that we approved earlier for the sidewalk program was for what streets?
It was for the 2021 sidewalk
Yes.
program, which.
Yes, I understand
which
that, but
included, which included a number of streets. It was Long Ridge, or Longwood, sorry,
Temple.
Longwood, Temple, Mayland, Sunset, Washington, Maplewood, Ridgeberry,
Elmwood,
Elmwood, and Edgewood.
wood.
And when I say Ridgeberry and Maplewood, that's the section between, would be Elmwood and Sunset, that section of Maplewood, because Maplewood's also on the 2022, but it's over by Orchard Heights.
And what streets was the sidewalks for this additional money?
It was Sunset and Elmwood were the two primary streets. So if you drive down there, you'll see a lot of blocks that are together on the Sunset.
The infamous change order.
And if you can just do me a favor and make sure that Mrs. Sabetta, whatever she was talking about over on Lander, the sidewalk and the bridge over there, if you can get those answers for her, that would be great.
I'll share it with all the council,
Perfect.
just so.
Thank you. Okay, roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mr. Balstria.
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Motion C has been approved.
Thank you for your indulgence tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you. There was a recommendation to move into executive session to discuss pending litigation, economic development, and property acquisition. I need a motion.
Moved.
Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, second by Mrs. Tressi. Roll call on the motion to move into executive session.
Mr. Mano,
I didn't hear,
Move into the executive session.
I just didn't hear my name on the call. Yes.
Mr. Balstria.
Yes?
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes?
Mrs. Teresi,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Okay, it is now 8:50. We will move into executive session. 9:25, we will open this meeting back up. Is there any new business or comments from council?
No.
I have a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Moved by Mr., oh my God, Mano, second by Mr. Balestria. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you, everyone. We are now adjourned.